as we get started, I want to say welcome. Specifically, I want to give an introduction to my friends from Apex Title. This is Heidi on your right, Melody on your left. Thank you for bringing the cookies and the punch. And they also brought gifts. So I have an ownership role in Apex Title. I'm an attorney there as well. And so we brought y'all some gifts. I hope you'll take advantage of those. There's also a coupon for some money off of closing costs. So I hope you'll enjoy that and use that hopefully soon. So I'm doing a little bit of technological stuff as we do this. And I'm new somewhat to what we're doing on the computer. But we are recording this, so if you have a personal question that you want to ask, maybe ask me later, not so much on the YouTube stream. But I had shared with some of you earlier that what I'm going to do is when we are all said and done here, this is streaming to YouTube, but it's not a live link that anybody's got access to yet. Once it's there, I'm going to be able to send you the link. So if you missed something or you're caught up on a slide or I went too fast or you had some questions or didn't get the math right or whatever, you're going to be able to get this and go back and record and see the recording, pause it, and so forth. So that'll be good. I'm also going to send you any of the notes that I've got. I'll literally send you this PowerPoint, and then I'll send you things like if we reference any forms or we talk about personal financial statements and stuff like that I'll reference here, I'm going to get you copies of all of that, and I'll send it to you via email. Similarly, once you've got my email, if you've got any questions, you'll be able to send those to me, and I'll help any way that I can in that context. So, did we have door prizes? Were we going to do door prizes or something? We were? We're going to do that now, or you want to wait till later? We'll do it later. All right, so we're going to do door prizes later. All right, so I want to give you a little bit of an intro. I'm going to move very, very, very fast, okay? If you need me to stop, stop me, but I want to be conscientious of your time, and I've allocated basically roughly 2 hours to this. And so being conscientious of your time, I'm going to move fairly quickly. Hey, guys, welcome. Just find a seat. There's one up front, two up front, and then a couple here, wherever you like. So let me give you an introduction myself. I'm a real estate investor, obviously. You wouldn't be listening to me if I didn't know what I was talking about. But that's not ultimately what got me started in my professional career. So I'm an attorney at Goebel & Yao, managing partner of that law firm where we do criminal, family, personal injury, civil work. We do leases. By the way, some of the things that I talk about us doing, we do. So we do contracts, we do leases, we do evictions, we do landlord-tenant stuff. It happens to be these two gentlemen to the right, two tall chairs. This is Nathan Webb and Gerard Cox. These are attorneys at my law firm that do evictions and other things. And so that's where I practice law. That's my desk job. That's where I am every day, sitting at a desk. Not everything, good to see you. Not everything that I'm doing at that desk is law related, because that's also where I do the rest of my business services, such as the fact that I'm an investor. And so that's really what brings you to me, is I'm an investor with a building portfolio, growing portfolio of rentals. I do flips, I do new construction, I do land development, and I've done a variety of other things, multifamily and so on and so forth. I'm in syndications, things like that. My portfolio right now, which I always try to share with people, I have bought now, I quit counting at 300 doors, so I've bought over 300 doors. My portfolio right now is hovering somewhere around 160 or so. So that puts it in context for why maybe you might ought to listen to me, why you might ought to read the book. There are certainly people who have done far greater things than I in real estate, and that's perfectly fine. Listen to them too. Take everything everybody says with a grain of salt. But if some of y'all that came in late, did you get a copy of the book already? You got one? All right, if you didn't get a copy of the book, make sure that you get one as a token of my appreciation. But anyway, all right, so let me tell you this. I don't want to be a guru. I always say this every time I do one of these kinds of lessons, these kinds of lectures. I don't want to be a guru. I don't want to be the guy who says, thanks for coming to my $25 class. You know, here's my $5,000 class. Although we may do one of those, that's not why I've got you here. I'm not upselling you for a course. I'm not selling you anything. But I will tell you, unembarrassingly, I know why, the reasons that I'm doing this. I want to bless you, but I also want to be a blessing to you in more ways than one. So I do practice law, I do own Apex Title, and I am a real estate agent. So if I can help you in any capacity, I want to be that guy to help you. And so I'll make my sales pitch, so to speak, on the front end, that, you know, if you think you gained something from this class today and you want to say thanks to me, bring your next closing to Apex Title. I would greatly appreciate it. You've got a coupon for $100 off your next closing costs. So a little bit more about me as we keep going. Obviously, the author of this book, the husband of an amazing Erin Yao. Who in here knows my wife? A couple of you. She is significantly greater than I am. If I didn't think I would mess up the PowerPoint, I would go and show you my home screen, which is just a picture of her face. But we've got two awesome daughters, Emily and Eliza. And then things that I enjoy doing, I enjoy hunting, I enjoy fast cars, and I enjoy making millionaires. You see what I did there? This is not about Eric making millions. This is about Eric making millionaires, okay? This is why I enjoy what I do. I enjoy teaching this stuff. I don't want to be TikTok famous like some people, but I want to be the guy that you think of when you think, man, I need to close this at a place where I can trust the people who are running it. I know somebody who knows what they're talking about, or I need an agent who's experienced in this, who has literally bought over 300 homes himself, and so on and so forth. So, everybody, we have an exercise. Pick up your phones. Pick up your phones. You got your phones, right? Flip them open, right? And then my cell phone is right here. I want you to text me your name. That's all you got to do. You text me your name. I'm going to save it. And then, you know what I'll do when you call? I'll answer. Because if I don't have you saved to my phone, I'm not going to answer it. All right, so while you're doing that, in the first hour, we're going to do some high-level intro stuff kind of thing, and then in the second hour, we're going to get into the weeds. I want to know what your bio is. We don't have the time to do all of this, but I want you to at least be thinking about this. When I've done this class in the past, it's much shorter and less involved. We're going to do less math in that shorter class, but I would want to dig into who you are and what you want to do. Okay, so we don't have the time to do that. We got too big of a class. We got 40 people in here, so I want you to be thinking about literally who you are in this station in life, where you are in your station in life. I'm an agent, or I've got a day job, a W-2 or a 1099, whatever it is, and here's where I want to go. Here's where I aim for, right? You might even be sitting in a position right now where you think you are pretty successful at what you do, but I know you got goals. I know you got somewhere that you want to be. So think about what you're doing and what you want to do, where you want to go, and ultimately we're going to be setting some goals here. In this class, we're going to be setting some big picture goals, or at least I want you to be thinking about setting some big picture goals. We're going to be talking about keeping score, and I'm going to introduce you to a personal financial statement. So good to see you. Glad y'all made it. Good to see you, Philip. All right, we're going to talk about setting big picture goals, keeping score, building your team, and I'm going to dig deep into so many of these things. How cool is that? Little reunion there, right? Making a plan, taking action steps that you can actually take to take those forward progress steps, deal analysis. So we're going to talk about a lot more. I get on this roll where I just go, and I want to talk fast, and I want to get a lot done. I want to get a lot said over the next hour or two. If you need me to stop and you have a question, don't hesitate to stop me. So let's talk about the first thing, which will be setting big picture goals. Now, and I'll stop on a lot of these, and I'll spend some time talking about them. Let me back up before I get too deep into that. You know the phrase like, know your why. Who has heard that phrase, know your why? All right, arms down. Who knows your why, your own why? All right, I want every hand to go up. They don't yet, and they never do in the first class, so to speak. But after this, I want you to know your why. I want you to know why you want to do what you want to do. A few slides ago, I talked about, like, what are you doing? Where do you want to go? Those kinds of things lend your mind toward, take your mind towards setting goals, towards trying to accomplish something and what you want to do and how you want to do it, but not so much the why. I want you to know your why, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you my why. My why, in no uncertain terms, is I want to be wildly successful. I want to be so successful that I can provide an amazing life and lifestyle for my family, for my children, perhaps even my children's children, and I also want to be a blessing to others, to you and to others that I might interact with, and I want to be wealthy enough that I can blow people's minds with the good gestures that we might be able to take over the course of our lives. So at 42, at 42, let's say I'm halfway there. Over the second half of my life, I want to do so much more for people than I did in the first half of my life. And you might think generously like that. Whatever your why is, that's my why. And then in setting some goals, you might gear your goals towards that why. My goals, I'm not ashamed about them. I want 100 million net worth. That's a million with an M, not a B. A little saliva sound like a B. I want 100 million net worth, okay? Some say, that's a lofty goal. You'll never get there. You're out of my life. I don't want to listen to you. You know, I want to get to 100 million. I want to get to 250 doors in my rental portfolio. I got about 160 doors of the portfolio, some of which are probably getting carved out. So I'm maybe 100 short, but I'm on the way. And my horizon, 55 years old. So like I'm on this trajectory and I want to get there. If you know your why and you can set goals according to that why, then you're going to be on the right track. Is there one more chair? There's two more, three more chairs. Somebody's coming in. I think he went to the men's room. His name is Tyler. When he walks in, hey, Tyler. Okay. All right. So anyway, so I know my whys and I know my goals, but in this context, I want us to think about your big picture goals. Not so big picture like I was just talking about net worth and that kind of thing. I don't know, maybe you'll go in that direction. But let's look at some of these bullet points. I want to try to stay on script. Your goals might have this big picture in mind where I want to create active income. There's a big difference between active income and passive income. Read the book. But active income is something that if you stop doing the thing that produces this income, that active income stops. Tyler. Hey, Tyler! So if you stop, for instance, wholesaling or flipping or whatever it is that you might be doing that creates that active income, if you got hit by a bus or you decided you didn't want to do it anymore, that income stops, that's active income. Your big picture goals may be, I want to increase my active income. And I want you to think of it like this. We've got a couple of real estate agents in this room, some high revenue generating, high producing real estate agents make, a couple $100,000 a year. Well, I want to make another 100. Well, what have I got to do that? That's active income. I either got to sell more houses, build and sell more houses, or I got to flip some houses or whatever else it might be. That's what you're thinking about. If my big picture goal is I want to create active income, you're going to design a set of action steps according to that. Passive income, markedly different. Similar in the scope that they're both in real estate, at least in this context, but passive income is more in line with I'm going to buy rentals, or I'm going to invest in syndications, or I'm going to do something that creates that revenue stream where I don't have to be active in it. The difference, as we described a minute ago, active income, if I get hit by a bus, it stops. Passive income, if I get hit by a bus, my managers are still renting my rental houses and that kind of thing. The CF means cash flow. There's going to be a lot of abbreviations and a lot of acronyms and things like that. So just follow with me, do the best that you can, write everything down. Net worth goal. So I already shared with you my net worth goal. My net worth goal, I want to try to get to 100 million net worth. Defining net worth is, that's between you and God. How I define net worth, I'll share with you, and we'll get to that point, I'm sure. But if you have a goal to meet a certain net worth, you're going to design where you go from here. And I mean where you go from this class. When you walk out of the store, you're going to design where you go leaving this class based on some of those goals. What about a quantity of doors? I tell you what's funny is when I first started investing in real estate, which was only in 2017, January of 17, so we're in it like 8 or 9 years or whatever at this point. And so January of 17, I set a goal. I wanted to buy 4 rental doors over the course of that year, 1 per quarter. And I just challenged myself, and we're going to do it because I wanted to get to a portfolio of 10 doors and then pay them off over time and retire with 10 doors. Right? Goals change. Right? So your goal right now, your quantity of doors, if you're trying to build a rental portfolio, that will probably change. Some of your goals are going to change dramatically. Some of them might change minutely, but you'll adapt and improvise over time. Your retirement horizon, another big picture goal. Some of you are a little older than me. Some of you are a lot younger than me. Some of these, sometimes your goals are going to be set based on your retirement horizon. If you're thinking, I don't have quite so long as some of these youngsters in this room before I'm going to be at that point where I'm ready to stop, your goals are going to be different than, for instance, mine or somebody else's just because of that time horizon. But you may have big picture goals that deal with your retirement horizon. Some people who aren't quite so old still think, I want to retire at a young age. And so your retirement horizon gets compressed. Do you understand how that would work? I don't want to work well into my 50s. I want to be retired in my 40s. Awesome. That's your prerogative. You figure out how to do it. Maybe some of these kinds of steps will be able to help you. But you got to set those goals, and you got to define those goals based on, your big picture prerogative. Any questions or anything about that slide? I'm going to blow through a lot of this stuff so we can get super deep into the meat and potatoes. One big thing that you've got to work on is keeping score. If you've got something to write down on, actually, it's going to be in your cards. You already got my email. Who in here has a personal financial statement done? All right, let me see it. I'm just kidding. Wouldn't that be so bad? So if you've got a personal financial statement, one more time, be proud, show of hands, who's done a personal financial statement? So maybe 5 or 6, 7 people in the room, okay? I don't want to know your number. We're not talking about it. I just want to know that you've done it. So basically, maybe a quarter of the room, or maybe, I don't know, maybe 20% of the room has done a personal financial statement. There is not a single person in this room. How old are you? You look particularly young, in your 20s maybe? How old are you? Early 20s, okay. Anybody younger than early 20s? What are you, 17? So even, I mean, this is just my opinion. I'm one guy. You paid to learn my opinion, so I'm going to give you my opinion, right? So I think every single person in this room needs to do a personal financial statement. And if she goes ahead and does it right, if you go ahead and do it right now, you are starting the scoreboard. And it's going to be ugly. It's going to be negative. It's not going to be worse than mine when I first did mine. Because when I first did mine, you know what the number was? Negative. Why? Credit card. I didn't even have a mortgage yet. School debt. So I was like, this is 2007. I was 130 grand in student loan debt, having graduated from undergrad and law school, paying my own way. Paying your own way means borrowing every step of the way. So you know, I was negative. So anyway, when you do your personal financial statement, it may be negative. Yours is probably going to be 0, right? I ain't got none. I'm 17. I live at home. That's fine. That's great. But if you go ahead and do it, you start the scoreboard. If you don't do a PFS, you don't have a scoreboard. You're not even playing the game. You don't even know where you're at. You don't even know if you're on the right field. You're not playing the game if you're not keeping score. I'm not making a commentary on T-ball. So a personal financial statement is, in my opinion, the way to keep score. If you email me, I'll send you a blank. And I already said earlier today that I'd send everybody, you know, the forms that I'm going to reference in this class. I'll try my best to remember to do that, but feel free to send me an email and ask me for it. But a PFS is going to say, here's all the income that I make. So it'll have an income statement on there. Banks are going to want to see that when you borrow money from them. It's going to have everything that you own. And I mean everything. If you've got a $2,000 diamond ring that you got when you got married 20 years ago, put that diamond ring on there, $2,000. You got all your positives, and then you also have all your negatives. So you've got all your assets and you've got your liabilities, and they're characterized properly. You got your debt service on there. You got all that stuff on there. If you got lines of credit, you put those on there. If you got credit card or other consumer debt, you put that on there. And then literally a spreadsheet will do that auto sum at the end, and it'll say you got this much ahead of 0, you got this much behind 0. Here's your net worth, okay? And so your personal financial statement will be your score. Now, it is not the only score that matters, and I don't want you to hear me say that. However, if your goal has something to do with net worth, like mine does, that matters, okay? That is how I'm keeping score. You keeping score may be something more in line with the quantity of doors, or maybe a debt-to-income ratio, or something else, but that PFS is going to be crucial. It's going to be integral, in my opinion, for keeping score. The PFS is also invaluable, let's say, for a variety of other reasons. Namely, when you go to a bank, what do they want to see? What are the several things that they want to see? Tell me. What does a bank want to see when you go to a bank and said, can I have some money? All right, pay stub. They want to know your income. Whether you're a W-2 or 1099, if you're a 1099, they want 2 years or more, right? Your W-2, they're like, whatever, you got a job, let's go. All right, so they want to see your income. What else? All right, maybe some expenses, particularly if you're 1099, but you're thinking of debt-to-income ratio. You're thinking of like, can I service the expenses that my household creates? What else? All right, they want to see your tax returns. What are they going to pull? All right, you want to have a good credit score, right? There was a period of time when we did the Dave Ramsey thing, and after we got done doing the Dave Ramsey thing, Aaron and I, we had no credit score. And it's like, yeah, oh, crap. What do we got to do? And I was like, let's get rid of these credit cards. And then I'm like, dang, we need a credit card. And so I literally had to fabricate a credit score, not unlawfully, but like had to manufacture a credit score by a couple of mechanisms. I can teach you all how to do that if it ever comes up. Well, what else are they going to want to see? They're going to want to know what you own and what you owe, okay? And so your credit score may show some of those open accounts, car loan, and that kind of stuff. Your PFS is going to outline all of it. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be 2 or 3 pages, and you're going to be able to say, hey, banker, I want to borrow some money from you. And they're like, whoa, we just met. Well, here's my PFS. and here's my last 2 years' tax returns. Here's my pay stubs. And then all of a sudden, now you look superior to anybody else that just walked in the door and asked for money, and you'll be more likely to get money. So the purpose of the PFS is greater than just keeping score, although in my opinion, keeping score is a huge benefit of that. Oh, on that PFS, by the way, if you do it right now, what's your name? Aubrey. Everybody tell Aubrey, do your PFS. All right, if you do your PFS right now, 6 months from now, you're going to do it again. What are you going to want to see? Yeah, you're going to want to see increase. You're going to want to see growth. If you don't know what the scoreboard is when you do it 6 months from now, you don't know what you did. So everybody do your PFS. Next time we do this, I want to say who all did it and every hand go up, and there's no excuse not to, even if it's just for your own gratification to know that you're in the game, you're doing the things that you need to do to accomplish your goals. All right, let's keep moving. That PFS and other scoreboards might tell you what your debt position is, what your debt structure is. There's a lot incoming about DSCR loans and things like that. So there's a lot of stuff about that that you might take note of. Income calculation. That PFS, by the way, and it's almost out of place, at least in my opinion, on a PFS, that like right there in the top, it's like, where do you work and what do you make? And it's like, well, that doesn't really matter if the functions are all geared towards net worth. So they're looking at, is this a good buyer? Is this a stable buyer? But it does have the position in there, and the banks do want to know, how much do you make? What is your income calculation? That kind of thing. By the way, income calculation, and I know I'm jumping around a bit, if you do go to look at borrowing money, people are going to want to know how much you make. But in terms of keeping score, if you look at what you made last year and what you made this coming year, like what do you want it to do, Aubrey? You want it to increase. You want it to go up. Right? If you're not keeping score, like if you don't know how much you made last year, if you're not keeping up with your income, now granted, I'm a believer. I believe Colossians 3 says it properly, set your minds on things above, not on things on the earth. Money isn't all that. It's not the thing that is ultimately important. But if we're going to do this, and we're going to do this for the glory of God or whatever your ulterior motives are, if you're not keeping score, how do you know if you made more this year than last year? 1099 folks. It's super easy for us to just get in the grind and rush hard. I'm hammering signs in the yard. I'm selling houses. I'm doing TikToks or whatever it is that I'm doing day to day, year to year, and then not even know what I made last year. And if I don't really know what I made last year, how am I going to compare it to where I'm at right now? If I don't know how many doors I bought, if I don't know how many wholesales I made, if I don't know how much I netted, how am I going to compare that to this coming year? So that's where this stuff really comes into play. Access to capital. Sorry, I clicked it twice. Access to capital. In my book, we talk about buckets, and I'll talk about buckets when I'm doing some coaching and consulting with people, because people will come to me and they'll say, hey, I want to get investing in real estate. How do I do it? Okay, well, here's how to do it. Read a book, and then we'll have lunch. But when we talk about it, I'm like, what can you put in the bucket? What do you have access to? What can you put in the bucket to then take out of the bucket to then go and invest in real estate? And if you don't have anything in the bucket, it's going to be hard to invest. Well, you've got a bucket. You just may not have anything in it. How do you put money in the bucket? The investment bucket. How do I find money? Well, you can find money a variety of ways. We're actually going to talk about them some in just a little bit. But you can find money from partners. You can find money from family members. You can find money in the couch. I'm not kidding. You can find money by refinancing things or taking lines of credit against things. Some people literally max out credit cards. I'm not saying do any of those things. I'm certainly not saying max out a credit card. But you'll be able to figure out what access to capital you have. And if you have access to capital, but you're tapped out, that'll tell you something. If you've got a surplus of access to capital, that'll tell you something. But if you don't know those things, you might as well not even be playing the game. You need to know these things. You need to be able to keep score. Net worth, which I already referenced on the personal financial statement. Net worth to me is a big metric that we keep up with. And just like Aubrey, I want to know what mine is now so that 3 months from now or 6 months from now, I know if I'm trending upwards. And sometimes it's like the stock market, but if you back up and look at it, I want it to be trending upward, and I want to be moving forward and making progress and all of those things. Any questions about any of that while I take a sip?
Are self-employed. You're always trying to make yourself look like you earn as little as possible on your tax returns. So do you see greater challenges with that than somebody with a W-2?
I do. So this is a great question. This is the question that I thought we would get in the second hour, or maybe after class, but it always comes up. So the idea is that if I'm going to try to, if I'm looking at preparing my taxes, I want that number that I'm going to be paying taxes on to be as low as possible. But then I'm going to get those taxes filed, and it says it's low as possible, and I didn't pay the federal government very much at all. Then I'm going to go to the bank. Sam's the banker, of course, because you were a minute ago. So we come over here to the bank, and the bank says, wait a minute, you only made $20,000 last year. And you're like, no, I really made $200,000, but I'm cheating the federal government. Tax fraud. I've got a meme that I sent my CPA like 2 hours ago that was SpongeBob tax fraud. But anyway, so yeah, you want it to be as low as possible for tax purposes, but when you go to your bank, you want it to be as high as possible so you can borrow money and buy more houses and invest in real estate and all the other fun things that you might be able to do with money. And there is that balance. My position is I will pay more in taxes. I will simply pay more in taxes so that I can come over here and do this thing. Because the savings on taxes is at the opportunity cost of so much more over there. Like you can fabricate and you can manipulate and you can design your tax return based on certain exemptions and deductions and so on and so forth, that it would be great and you pay little or nothing to the IRS, but it keeps you from doing things over here where if your tax return showed substantial income and monetary power or prowess, I've got the capacity to go and do, banks are going to be like, wow, they make good money, they can handle making good money, let's loan them some more so that they can go and do better things, and with that, pay us interest. That's my opinion. I meant to do this on the front end, and I'm glad we're recording this because now it's memorialized forever. I'm not a CPA. I'm not a tax attorney. I'm not a tax advisor. Anything that I'm giving you today that might even have a hint of input about taxation, that is not an official opinion, having scrutinized the Internal Revenue Code and giving you legal advice or anything like that. Talk to your CPA. We're going to talk in a little while about building your team. Get a good CPA, ask them that question. But while you're listening to that CPA, you're also listening to me. You're also listening to your financial advisor. You're listening to other mentors and coaches, and you're taking the advice and doing the best that you can do so that you can take those forward steps and make that forward progress. Questions about that? Any input? Anybody else got an opinion on that? Did anybody not hear me say that I'm not a CPA? I'm not a tax advisor. I'm just trying to stay out of trouble, y'all. That's all I'm trying to do. I pay a lot in taxes. I could probably teach a really good class on taxes, but it would have to be like disclaimer, sentence. Disclaimer, sentence. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to be construed as a tax expert. I'm certainly not. But I can I can teach you from my mistakes and things of that nature. All right, so we're going to talk about building your team. Who thinks they have an exhaustive team already presently set up for all things real estate? That's, yeah, one of you maybe. I've got a lot of people in my pocket, so to speak, a lot of people behind me and with me. I don't think my team is ever complete. And the reason I don't think my team is ever complete is because there's always something where it's like, oh man, I gotta, clean a chimney. Dang, I need a chimney guy, So you call somebody, Tyler, who knows somebody, and you get a chimney guy or whatever. But you got to build your team in real estate so that you can put people in the places where they need to go and that they can help you when you need that kind of help. The problem is right now, especially if this is an intro class for total intro investors, new investors, like you don't even know who needs to be on that team, unless maybe you read the book. There's a book about this, by the way. Who is so new that you've not done a single deal in real estate? All right, who is so new that you've done less than 5 deals in real estate? All right, who's 10 deals in real estate? A few more. Who's done 20 or more? Just 20 or more. Okay, all right. So we've got a variety of people. Speaking specifically to the super new investors that are in this room, and I mean like 5 or fewer deals, like this is going to be a very important slide for you. If you're experienced, you already have probably 80% of these people on the slide on your team. But I just want to go through some of these really fast. So in order to invest in real estate, you're going to have to find what? Real estate. Somehow you've got to have access to the deal that comes across your desk. And so some people call them bird dogs. Bird dogs might be somebody who finds the deal and then brings it to you. Maybe you pay them a referral fee. I'm not making a commentary on the propriety of paying a referral fee specifically for realtors, but humor me for a minute. You might pay somebody to be that bird dog and give you addresses or help you get connections with people who are trying to sell houses. Wholesalers, there are some in this room, by the way. You might network with people. Y'all should all network in this. We should shut that door and y'all don't leave until you've done some networking, because there's investors that want to buy houses. There's wholesalers who have access to leads and deals. So the wholesalers might be the ones to bring you deals. Buyer's agents. Who in here is a buyer's agent? And I don't just mean for investors. Do any buyer's agent work? All right. Those people whose hands are up might be important for the rest of y'all to meet. I don't know that they want to work specifically with investors. I'm not trying to make a commentary on their workload. Some agents, by the way, I only want to do this particular type of client. I only want to deal with sellers, or I only want to deal with buyers, but I don't really want to deal with investor buyers. Why would I not want to deal with investor buyers? Because y'all suck. No. You know, we don't know what we don't know. Maybe we're needy. We can't make a decision. Maybe we say something, but we don't really know. We don't have access to capital. There's all kinds of reasons why a buyer's agent wouldn't want to work with an investor. So you got to find a buyer's agent that wants to work with an investor if you have to have somebody else bring you that deal. So that's tricky, but those people need to be on your team. At least somebody in that bullet point, somebody in that slide. All right, and you need a seller's agent. You may say, well, I'm going to build a portfolio of rentals. Why do I need a seller's agent? Well, not every rental works out. You might need to dump that rental, or that it may be that you get that rental in your portfolio and then you 1031 into something else. Well, if you're going to 1031 into something else, you got to dispose of this asset. There's regulations and things that you've got to deal with on that. So you need an experienced seller's agent. You need, for instance, a business partner from time to time. Business partners could come in the terms of silent partners who simply bring money to the table. Could be your business partner, somebody who brings the deal, and they bring the deal and you bring the money, or they bring the deal and you bring the legwork, or whatever else it might take to build that process out. So from time to time, you want or need a business partner. What I'm not saying on here is you can't do it alone in that context, that everybody has to have a partner. But I will say, don't be afraid to partner with somebody. There's certainly people out there, you call them lawyers, who you can have design a partnership agreement or build an LLC and design that entity around whatever structure it is that you want to engage in with that partner. It could be that you do silent partnerships in the form of what I call a not a partnership. Write that down, it's hyphenated, not-a-partnership. And we do not a partnership agreements. They're actually called limited co-ownership agreements. Are you writing all this down? Limited co-ownership agreements are when me and a friend might want to buy a piece of property, but we don't want to be a partnership. Why would we not want to be a partnership? Anybody? Partnership return. We don't want to have to do one more thing, have another filing with the CPA that does a partnership return in K-1s, and we don't want that. So we become limited co-owners of that of that property. And so let's say Sam and I were going to own a rental, or we're going to flip a house, we could do a limited co-ownership. Some people call it a JV, a joint venture agreement. That's super baseline. I like something more sophisticated. Do a not a partnership agreement, a limited co-ownership agreement, because then if it ever hit the fan and it's like, well, wait a minute, y'all are a partnership. No, we're not. We even signed a not a partnership agreement. Sounds dumb. It's not. I didn't know it was going to sound dumb. We signed a limited co-ownership agreement. Do you agree? When you do this, and now it's not a partnership, and therefore we're limited to our engagement with one another about this particular deal. But that could be a form of business partner without getting so deep in the weeds. You're not in bed with that person indefinitely and so on and so forth. And dissolving a not a partnership is going to be easier than dissolving a partnership. What other partnerships or what other business partners might you have in the context of investing in real estate? Does anybody think of anything else? All right. What do you mean by that?
What was offered to be members, where they have partners that was offered to be members.
Okay, so thinking about the entity structure, you could be a partner as in become a member of the LLC that's investing in the real estate, so that at the distribution of that asset or series of assets, you profit in that capacity. Become a member of somebody else's LLC, or maybe a syndication. Everybody know what a syndication is? Read the book. A syndication is where somebody might be buying a big apartment complex or whatever it might be, and they need to fund that, and so they seek out funding from other people, maybe even across the country or around the world, that have to be accredited buyers, million net worth, $250,000 a year income, that kind of thing, and you can invest in the syndication, but you're an LP in that point. So you got your GPs, your general partners who are actually the owners and doing it, but you're an LP, you're funding that syndication. In a way, you're a partner. That's a business partnership. You have as big of a piece of the pie as you buy, but you're very much a limited partner because you're silent, you're in the background, you don't have any real say-so in it, but you do get tax benefits and all these other things. All right, what else? Contractors. So we're going to get deeper into this list. Spoiler alert, lots of other people that are on the list to include contractors, but your business partners may literally be some of these people. It may be that you partner with your contractor or your builder. For instance, I partner with the builder. We build new construction. He finds the lot. I buy the lot. He comes out of pocket $0. We build the house. I like to say we because it makes it look like I did something. I didn't do anything. He builds the house, and then I, as the agent, sell the house. We close at Apex. Did y'all know I own Apex title? And so we close at Apex, and then, of course, we reap the benefits at the end of the day. And so that contractor is, in no uncertain terms, my business partner. Now, if it all hits the fan, who owns the house? This guy. But who carries the liability? This guy, right? So you got to kind of weigh that. But very much, contractors and other people on this list are going to be business partners. I've got a business partner in the context of a listing agent. So I am a listing agent, and I list all my own flips and flips for a lot of other people. A lot of houses for a lot of other people, but I've got a real estate agent partner, Fallon Wright, who is my right hand. You see what I did there? And so she is my business partner in that context. So like, you don't have to go alone, you know. You want to go somewhere alone, you go fast. You want to go fast, you go alone. You know, you want to go somewhere far. You want to go far, you go with, you know, your team, whatever. So business partners could be any number of people. What about your spouse or your significant other? Nobody said that yet. Like, my wife is my partner. I can't do anything without her. Now, she doesn't do a whole lot in the real estate business that we own, right? But I'm not going to do things completely independent of her. You know, I'm not going to go and you know, take it all and put it on black without talking to her, you know. So that, in no uncertain terms, you know, my significant other is my business partner as well. And I thought she was going to be here by the time we got to that part. It is on YouTube. I'm going to crop that, like make that my real. All right, so contractors, subs, project managers, you're building your team. You need the people who can do the things. Now, this list could be 5 or 6 slides long because if you think about it, contractor is so general. That's, you know, tip of the spear, whatever. And then everybody under this contractor in the list of things that happen to real estate, you know, you got your surveyors, you got your chimney repair guys, your drywallers, your painters, you got all these different people, and you can make that list just a mile long. And then I summed it up just by saying subs, not because I'm lazy, because I already had a lot of slides, and then maybe a project manager. So as you're building your team out and you're trying to think who could be this person, who could fit in this box, you might get to the point where you need a project manager. I had a project manager who was absolutely phenomenal for like 3 years. And then in 22, when the interest rates started going up and my businesses started going down, it was like I didn't have enough to keep him busy. We hung on as long as we could, and he eventually had to go get a real job. And so I lost him in that capacity. He went and got a real job. I make jokes. I've later replaced him with another project manager who is actually also my acquisitions manager, who is wonderful. But you just find the people and plug them into those places. If you don't have these people in place, you're going to wind up being in a position or a predicament where you have to call somebody. Don't everybody call me, but you got to call somebody and be like, hey, I need a drywaller, and I got to find that drywaller. What I did when I first got started is I built out a spreadsheet. And I made classifications for all these different subs, like everything that you could think of, painter, drywaller, framer, all these different things. And I found 3 people to put in every single one. And then anytime I needed something, I had somewhat of a Rolodex to go to. And then invariably, you know what wound up happening? That list got shorter and shorter and shorter because I only had to call this one person that I found that I could trust, this other person that I found that I could trust. And you keep plugging away, you know, at those people, and they'll support you and you'll help them, they'll do well. That kind of thing. And then eventually when I got a project manager, because we were flipping and buying so many rentals, it was like, here, you keep the list. And so then I don't even know who would do our drywall. You know, he's doing the project management. So if we need drywall, he just goes and figures it out. So that was really cool. So when you get to that point, look forward to that. Property managers, if you want to flip, you don't even have to think about this. But if you want to do rentals, you want to think about having property management. You might say, but Eric, I want to manage my own. Well, this is an intro class, so I can get to you on the ground level and say, don't manage your own real estate. Hire the pros. You know, Byers and Harvey, my license is hung with Byers and Harvey. I love it here. It's great. The people here are wonderful. They've got a property management team that is bar none. I mean, they're fantastic. And it's so wonderful because I can be like, hey, tenant, you got a problem? It's right over there, not me. Don't call my office. Sometimes I do. Don't call Eric Yao. Eric Yao doesn't even own the house. It's 123 Main Street LLC that owns the house. I don't know what you're talking about. And so these, the tenants will go through property management. I don't want to deal with tenants, toilets, and termites, as they say. And so as you're plugging people into those boxes, depending on what your goals are, it might be that you need a property manager on your team. Who in here wants to build a portfolio of rentals, no matter the size? Oh, thank goodness. There was a little, that 1 second before the hands went up, I was like, what are we doing? Oh, good, thank you. Who also wants to flip? At least some. Great, cool. Who wants to wholesale? Wholesalers. Why is your hand on the line there? It's not like this, it's like this. All right, so that's good. So you kind of know where people are and what you want to do and that kind of thing. If you do want to build a portfolio of rentals, I would just encourage you to make sure that a property manager, at least in some capacity, goes onto your list of people. Why do I think you need a lawyer? And don't say it's because I am one. Why do I think you need a lawyer? Because they know the law? Sometimes, right? Some of us. You need a lawyer on your team, not like you're going ahead and paying them on retainer right now in advance, prepaid legal fees kind of thing, but you need to know who to call when the issue arises. When you get served with that complaint because you did a thing that somebody thinks you did wrong or whatever it might be, you need to be able to have somebody to call, and you don't need to figure out then who to call. You need to go ahead and know who to call. I'm not saying go ahead and call me. But I am saying know who to call, right? You need to know who practices in civil law, who practices in criminal law, who does really good contracts or leases or evictions or whatever else it might be that you might run into over the course of your real estate investment career. If you're thinking about partnerships or you're getting into syndications and you got a lot of legal language that you're going to have to read that you've never read before and you don't understand, think about who that lawyer or lawyers might be that you would be able to call on. Next one's akin to that, another professional, a CPA. When you think about taxes like we did a minute ago, you're going to want to know who is going to be the person that I call with this tax-related question. Guess what? It's not the lawyer, because very rarely would the lawyer also be a tax attorney or a CPA, somebody who is qualified to give tax advice. If you go to your tax advisor, your CPA, and you ask them a legal question, you know what they're going to say? I'm not a lawyer, I can't answer that. You come to me and you say, I got a tax question, I'll be like, I'm not a CPA. All right, here's the answer. No, I'd say, I'm not a CPA, I can't answer that, but here's what I do. I'll help any way that I can. But you need to have a CPA on that roster, on that list of people in your team. Put them in the box, figure it out. CPAs come in high demand. They're also very expensive, but it is what it is. If you got a W-2 job and no investments, you're going to do your taxes at H&R Block, when you're 18, 19 years old or whatever. What's the tax thing? What's the online thing? TurboTax. It's been that long. So, you can do TurboTax until you get some real estate, and then you start running through those Schedule C's and D's and E's and G's and all that stuff. Or if you've got LLCs and things like that, it can get really complicated. TurboTax is not your thing there. If you want a good CPA referral, I can give you one. He may or may not take you, but there's a bunch of them here in town. And you don't want to call them April 1 and be like, hi, my name is, because April 1, they're not going to pick you up. You need them so much earlier than that. You need to call them like May 1 for the following year, in my opinion. All right, next one is an insurance agent, if you hadn't thought about it already, because anytime you buy real estate, you're going to want it insured just like you would a car or anything else of great value. And then you want to talk about money. So where you find money is going to be important. If you build your team without this last one, you might as well not be playing the game, because if you find a deal or somebody brings you a deal, let's say somebody brings you a deal from that first one and you know what you're going to do with it, with or without a partner, and you know who's going to sell it, what you got to get done with it, and you got all these things in place, but you don't have the money, you're not going to be able to take the deal down. Now, your business partner may have the money, and that's great. You partner with the right person. But if you don't have a partner and you don't have the money, you don't have the deal. So you want to figure out where the money comes from. And I just gave a couple of examples. A lender, as in a bank. And I like to use commercial lenders at our local banks. I like to support local banks, but also our local banks and credit unions, like they're really good to me. So I want to just keep going back to them. You've got national lenders, your Citibanks, your Wells Fargos, and things like that. What about private lenders and hard money lenders? You might have an uncle or aunt who's got some money, somebody who inherited some money, some wealthy relative who's got this money that's earning them 6%. You're like, hey, I'll give you 10. Oh, okay. What are you going to do? Well, I'm going to invest it in this flip or this rental or whatever else it might be. And you might be able to find money in that context. Does everybody know what a hard money lender is? All right, most of you, probably all of you, if you read the book or otherwise been in business a little bit, hard money lender is going to charge you a super high origination fee and higher than ordinary interest. I had lunch with an investor yesterday who was talking about usurious interest rates and things like that. I'm like, I don't want to talk about it. But a hard money lender would be somebody who's going to give you a very short-term loan, usually 6 months, maybe with a up to 1 6-month extension and things like that. But they're going to charge you 2 or 3 percentage points as an origination fee. They're going to charge you, usually right now I've seen 12% more often than not, as high as 15 or 16%, as low as maybe 10%. They're going to beat the market because they're parking money in your deal. They're going to want to make better than if they put in like an S&P 500 money market account, that kind of thing. But hard money lenders are exactly what they sound like. It's hard. It's hard money. They'll typically be 75% in the loan to value and things like that. And I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but if you have any questions about that, I'll be happy to answer them. Does anybody have any questions about any of the building your team stuff? So this is what's super important. When you're getting started, a lot of people want to get started and they want to be like, well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go find the house. That's awesome. If you go find the house, but you don't have these people lined up, and you don't have to have them all lined up, but if you don't even know who you need and you go find the house, man, that sucks. That's like finding $1 million and not knowing where to go with it, not knowing what to do with it. The wind's blowing, it's just blowing right out of your hand, right? But if you go find the house, if you go find the commercial deal, you find whatever it is that it might be that is this gem of a real estate deal, and you can't put it together because you don't have these people, you could lose it and it could be such a waste. Gloria's here. Hi, and her friend. Good to see you. We've got a chair here, and you're welcome to put a couple of them together. Y'all make them feel at home, would you please? But let's say you've got all these things put in place, but you don't have the money. Give me an option or two. What would you do? If you found a really good deal, but you didn't have the money, what do? Find somebody who does? Is that what you said? Reach out to another investor, network with people, try to figure out who could help me take this deal down. If I can't take this deal down myself, who do I have that can help me? I did that once myself on an eightplex, because earlier on in my investing, I'm buying a bunch of single-family rentals, and then remember when we said access to capital, my bucket was getting a little empty. I didn't have access to that much capital, but somebody brought me an eightplex, and I was like, oh yeah, it's going to be a good one, and it's that gem, that diamond in the rough. It's that, that treasure box buried in the field, and you found the field. I'm going to go buy that field. That's biblical, by the way. And so I knew we got to find the money, so I called another investor friend of mine, and I said, hey, let's go in halvesies. And we went in halvesies, we bought it, we wound up selling it a couple years later, 1031, made good money, and it all worked out. By the way, it doesn't always work out. But let's say you found that deal, the thing that you're going to want to do is go find somebody who can help you with that. Sometimes it's a business partner, sometimes it's a hard money lender, sometimes it's literally just your local bank that you go to every Friday anyway. You just don't know because you've not been to that side of the bank. So explore those options, explore those people, find the people that you could put in those boxes to help build your team. And title company. I'm not sure why there's asterisks next to those 4. Can you tell me? Vertical integration. So I'm not ashamed to say it. I would love to be your seller's agent. I would love to be the guy that you call as a business partner from time to time. I'd love to be able to help you as an attorney. I've got other attorneys in the room that I could refer you to if it wasn't me. And obviously, I want to earn your business at Apex Title, which is a huge reason why I'm doing this. All right, we're going to take a break here in just a minute. Make a plan and take action. I'm going to go through this one quickly because I want to spend more time on the latter half of the class. Make a plan and take action. Start with education. This is what you're doing right now. At, for instance, Byers & Harvey, if you're a real estate agent at Byers & Harvey, there are trainings every week, several days a week. It's crazy. There's tons of education specifically geared towards being a real estate agent, but also investor training. But find education that you can get into for investors as well. Read everything that you can read. Watch everything that you can watch, listen, attend, all that stuff. I will wind up probably doing more of these classes. I get a wild hair and I do them from time to time. I'm thinking about doing a second million class. which might even be longer, like an 8-hour day at my house or something. And then I'm thinking about doing a 10th million invitation-only 3-day mastermind at one of my lake houses. We'll talk about that. I'm not saying that you should go ahead and buy tickets for that. I'm not upselling you on that yet. But those kinds of things, like they might be valuable to you. So think about what you could do, find things that you could do, listen to things, everything with a grain of salt, obviously, including what I teach you. But learn as much as you can. Learn from others. Podcasts, there's like 1 million of them. Everybody with a computer has a podcast these days. I got started when Bigger Pockets was not quite to 100 episodes in their podcast. Now there's like 6 billion. But I listen to every Bigger Pockets podcast so that I could just learn. Even if it was something about like manufactured home parks, like mobile home parks. I don't want to do that, but I'm going to learn how to do it just in case. So learn as much as you can, listen to everything, learn from others. If you wanted to take more classes, if you want to get a coach, I'm not saying that you should. I'm also not saying that you should not. Just be careful, because I'll leave it at that. Network a lot. Who in here is a member of the Clarksville Real Estate Investors Group? I should probably ask it this way. Who is not a member of the Clarksville Real Estate Investors Group? Well, you're not from Clarksville, and you're not old enough to have a computer. Just kidding. So the Clarksville Real Estate Investors Group is kind of like the REIN, the REN Group in Nashville, which is just a real estate investor network. There was not one designated for Clarksville, so I created it. And it was awesome to see it go from like one dude to 10 of my friends, and then now it's like 3,000 people. So that's cool. But you can get in that agreeing to the rules and following the rules. If you're an admin for a Facebook group, bless you. It's stupid. But anyway, so the Clarksville Real Estate Investors Group is something that you should be in if you're not already in it. And listen to people, ask questions, talk to people, go to the meetups, go to the coffees, network with people, and just listen. Listen to everything. Talk with real estate investing talk about real estate investing with everyone. I said bring salt. You know what I mean? Take everything with a grain of salt. I've tried to teach my 11-year-old, who will be 12 in a week, try to teach her what take everything with a grain of salt means. And I had no way of actually conveying to her what that meant, if you ever think about it. Like, take everything with a grain of salt. You know what I mean when I say that. She was like, what are you talking about? When you talk with everybody you know about real estate, everybody's an expert. Everybody knows more than you. And it's crazy how many opinions people have. Oh, you shouldn't invest in real estate because this and that. Oh, renters are going to tear up your houses. Well, those people are bad at math, okay? Take everything people say with a grain of salt, but talk about real estate with everybody, because you'll never know who you're going to interact with that A, may be able to help educate you, or B, might be able to bring you a deal. If you get to talking about real estate and posting real estate investing related things on your socials, somebody might have an aunt who's losing her house and going to foreclosure, and they're looking for somebody to buy it, and then bam, the first person they think about is the person that they just saw in their news feed talking about, I'm looking to buy a house. They call you, you buy the house, you call Eric, and you say, thanks for that tip. I'm going to close it at Apex. And so talk with everybody you can about real estate. Get leads, wholesalers, lists. There's buyers lists that you need to be on. Talk with all the agents that you can talk to. And then we'll talk a little bit about marketing here in a minute, but get off the bench. So who in here has not yet done their first transaction in real estate? As an investor. Just a couple, 5, 6, okay. So there's agents in here who have done real estate transactions, but I mean as an investor. So very, very good point. So there's 5, 6, 7 of y'all who have not done your first deal. My last statement before we get our break is get off the bench. Like, just get off the bench. Just go get in the game. Because if you get off the bench and you go get in the game, what's the worst that can happen? Tell me. What are some bad things that can happen? All right, you make a bad investment, and then what? Well, what's a bad thing? That's a good thing that can happen from it. All right, you lose money. You know, this is kindergarten. These are softballs. You buy a bad investment, you lose money. What else? What else bad can happen? What's the worst? What are the worst things that could happen? You get sued. Dang, you gotta say that again. Louder for the people in the back kind of thing. You get sued, okay, and then what? Lose money, bankruptcy, reputation. Like, there's some bad stuff that could happen. Nobody said you go to prison. Nobody said they take your kids away. Nobody said they're going to come kill you or take your toenails off with pliers, right? So even the worst thing that could happen is not that bad if you really think about it. It's not even that bad. Now, I'll tell you as we get ready for a break, like all those bad things have happened to me, except the bankruptcy, not yet. So, did you say bankruptcy? Somebody said bankruptcy. Stell said, well, he's in bankruptcy. Just kidding. You know, you fill out those questionnaires and like, have you ever filed bankruptcy? I always put not yet. You don't know. You don't know. But, you know, all those bad things. I bought something that was a dud. I lost money on a transaction or 10. You know, I've been sued and it's an absolute nightmare. But here I am. Net worth still climbing. Got a lot of friends, you know, 2 or 3 in this room kind of thing. And like when you're investing in real estate, like it can be good. It can be really good. It could also be really bad, but it can't be that bad. And even the worst thing that could happen that we just talked about, you know, you lose money, like you're paying for your own education. What did you say a minute ago, Gloria? You learn from it. You know, how much was college? You know, cheaper than that investment that you just lost money on, right? or not as, no, more expensive, I should say. So the lesson that you learned in that bad investment might be cheaper than college. I think I just inverted those 2 analogies, but you know what I'm saying. Like it's not an expensive lesson. If you take that lesson with you, you use it on the next one, and you can make it up over and over. For every $10,000 I've lost, I guarantee you I've made 100. It's just the nature of the beast in investing in real estate. Anybody investing in the stock market right now? Give me one of these. All right. How'd your week go? Not yet. That's right. Yeah, everything's on sale now, or it was a day or 2 ago. But so, you know, you're investing in the stock market, and then, man, it takes a dump. I should say take a dive. That was crude. I apologize. You know, and it goes down. And if you don't sell, you didn't realize that loss. You know what I'm saying? But even if you did, like you lose, and then you buy back in, or you dollar cost average your way out, and then you dollar cost average your way back in, or maybe you pull out, you know, in a fit of emotion, and then you dollar cost average your way back in. 10 years from now, is it going to be higher or lower than what it is right now? It's going to be way higher, right? So no matter what happens, it's going to be better. Get off the bench. I'm going to take a break. I want you to get up, network, mingle, shake some hands, get some cards. I didn't make a formal introduction yet. This is Amir in the back. He's with Brackets Media. You've got a postcard in front of you. He's done some amazing photographs for us and video. Make sure you get to know him. And then get some punch from the girls at Apex Title in the back. Get some cookies, and we'll be back in just a minute. To the steps that you're going to take. Because, for instance, when you think about maybe the premise, I want to get into real estate, which everybody has had if you ultimately got into this room. I want to get into real estate investing. I want to figure out how to do it. And somebody will recommend a book. What is the book that everybody recommends that you read? Bam! Man, how'd you know I knew you were going to say that? Rich Dad Poor Dad is the #1 real estate investing book that is out there. It's the #1 seller and all the different things. But you know what it doesn't tell you in that book? How to do it. That's so frustrating. It's like, okay, I'm going to read the book that everybody in this room has probably read twice over, and you already know is the #1 book about real estate investing, and it gets you all motivated, it gets your blood flowing, you're amped up. I want to do what he did, but it doesn't not one time tell you how to do it. Okay, well, I want us to start learning how to do it. And that's really what I like to do in the second hour of a class like this. If you know your why, for instance, if my why drives me to try to grow my net worth, the action steps or the short-term goals, midterm goals they would have to have something to do with that why. If I want to try to grow my net worth, I could do this as a question and answer. What do I do? Well, I should probably buy rentals. Maybe buy rentals with equity or target rentals with equity. Maybe I need to look at buying things that appreciate, buy in an appreciating class of real estate. So for instance, as we go through some of these, if you think about the goal of I want to grow my net worth, I need to do things that work towards that goal. Do I need to flip? Not necessarily. Do I need to wholesale? Not necessarily. Do I need to park money in land? Not necessarily, because that may or may not be things that help me grow my net worth. If they do, great. Do things that help you grow the net worth if that's the goal that helps you meet your why. And then some of these other ones, and I'll just kind of go through some of these, if your goal is to create cash flow. Now, especially if you read Rich Dad Poor Dad, it kind of drives you into this mindset of I want to build an asset portfolio of cash flowing, cash producing, passive income generating assets. And so if you've got that in your mind, I want to build that portfolio of passive income, I want to build cash flow. Some of the things that you might do would necessarily need to include buying rentals with a high rent to investment ratio. RTI, at least for Eric Yau's classes, is rent to investment ratio. We'll talk about that again here in just a little bit. But so if I'm interested in cash flow, do I necessarily need to be buying A or B class properties? Do I need to necessarily be buying B class fixer-uppers? Maybe, maybe not. Should it be that I buy C or D class properties? Maybe, maybe not, but maybe. Because you think about what you're trying to accomplish, and if I'm trying to build cash flow, I probably don't need to be buying very expensive houses that may not carry themselves with the amount of rent that they can generate. I may need to be buying cheaper houses that can be cash flow positive, that have a good rent to investment ratio. If your why leads you to be inclined to develop short-term capital gains, if I'm looking at these flips, I'm looking at things that I'll be able to buy that I can generate that income with, that short-term capital gain or that self-employment income, I might be looking at doing some flips, or I might be looking at new construction. Before we even move on to the next one thing that I would think about is if you've got a diversified set of skills and portfolio growth mindset, you might be doing all these. You might be doing a little bit of flipping, a little bit of wholesaling, buying some rentals, and you might find, man, I really hate flipping, but I really like rentals. Well, I might flip one so I can afford to buy the rental. Or I really hate rentals, but I know that I need to hold this one for a year so I can make long-term capital gains. And so you might rent so that you can then sell and make more money on what would have been a flip and things like that. If you're looking at generating fast cash, you would be looking at wholesaling, for instance, things like that. If you're looking at long-term capital gains, you'd be looking at longer plays. Maybe it's back in the rental category, maybe it's in 1031 exchanges and just trying to ratchet up and things like that. This is not an exhaustive list. I can't teach you every way to make money in all the different scenarios that you'd be able to invest in real estate because there's only about 1 million of them. But if you know your why and your why drives you to do certain things, then you're going to want the things that you do to be geared towards that specific goal set. If I really want to get into flipping, by the way, let me take a side story on this one. When I told you a little while ago, in 2017, when I wanted to start investing in real estate, I wanted to buy 4 rentals, which I thought was a lot. 1 per quarter in the calendar year of 2017 because I wanted to get to a portfolio of 10 rentals. I didn't want to flip. Not even in the slightest. I didn't know anything about flipping. I didn't want to flip. But you know when you buy a house and you realize, wow, there's a boatload of equity in this house. If I sell it, even after I pay my taxes, I could take the net and I could buy 2 houses. And man, if I take these 2 houses and I keep one, but I sell this one, I could buy 2 more. Now I got 3. And you start doing some of those mathematic gymnastics or whatever, now all of a sudden you're flipping. And you're flipping and renting and renting and flipping and wholesaling, and you're developing your skill set and you're developing your portfolio to be very widely rounded and diversified. By the way, in 2017, I wound up buying 3 houses in the first quarter. One of them I kept, one of them I flipped, 2 of them I kept. And then I did the same thing in the second quarter, and it just kept going and going and going until by the end of the year I had done 12 doors. And it was like, man, I could do this. And you start getting that motivation and that momentum, and then you just keep growing from there. But it all goes back to some of your goals. So developing those goals. What is your retirement plan? If you've got a retirement plan where I really want to park money and grow it for the long haul, and I don't want to pay taxes on the gain, you might do one of these. What does that stand for? Self-directed IRA. So you might be able to put some money from your 401k or your SEPs or whatever else it might be into a self-directed IRA. You move that money into this kind of bucket. This is not a class about the self-directed IRA, but the short version is you can move your money into that kind of bucket where it would grow tax-free. You can use it to invest in things tax-free, and then as you continue, you could flip, you can buy rentals and various other things, talk to your CPA, talk to your financial advisor, and then as long as you're not taking that money and you're not touching it, you're not capitalizing on that, and it stays in the bucket, proverbially speaking, then it can grow tax-free. And there are a bunch of other regulations that we're not going to get into. But if your goal is, look, I really want to just force money into this retirement bucket, you might be looking at doing something like that as a part of your tasks, as a part of your action steps geared towards your why. All right, now, you all ready for some math? Yeah. I could spend 2 hours on the next couple slides. I'm not going to, but I could. And I almost thought about doing this dry erase board, but I don't want to take this down. There's a dry erase board back here. All right, flipping, know your numbers. You found a deal. What do you need to know? The first thing, in my opinion, that you need to know is what's called the ARV, which is the after repair value. Let me go back. You found a deal. What do you need to know? You need to know the after repair value. How do you come up with what is the after repair value? What are other words for after repair value? Market value, the comp. How would you find value of a house? You comp it, or you have somebody who's qualified to comp it. You could get an appraisal. You know, those kinds of things. They create a figure of value. Your opinion of value may differ from my opinion of value, may certainly differ from a VA appraiser's opinion of value, if you know what I'm saying. You got all these different people who have opinions of value, but you're trying to get this honed in dollar amount of what you would have on your notepad as ARV, your after repair value. If you don't have your after repair value, you don't even start. You don't do the next several steps because you've got to have this after repair value. I did write an article for Krieg for the Clarksville Real Estate Investors Group, so if you're not a member of that group, you should get into that group. If you search for posts from Eric Yao, you'll find a million of them. It was a long time ago. Humor me, you find it. It's probably one of the most valuable things that I wrote on there that you could find. But I wrote an article about how I come up with my ARV. I didn't want to regurgitate that for you because we could spend literally an hour talking about it. But when you can, we should talk about it a little bit. All right, so, I mean, I don't want to not feed you. I want you to be well fed, but I also don't want to be here till 6, 7 o'clock. I'll stay as late as y'all want. So after we're done, if you've got more questions or you want me to dig deeper, I'll dig deeper. You'll get your money's worth today kind of thing. But so to figure out the ARV, you go to everywhere that you can find a dollar amount, any sort of value. I hate the Zestimate and the Trulia Realtor type things. Those are called automated evaluated systems or whatever, AVMs. What are they called? I can't remember what AVM stands for. But anyway, so they're like automated values, right? The Zestimates and things like that. That is still a metric. That is still a data point. Ask any real estate agent in the room and they're going to be like, oh, I hate Zillow and Zestimates and all that. But it's a data point, all right? What about the tax assessor's value? Before 2 years ago, you'd say that tax assessor's value is way low. I'm not going by the tax assessor value. And now what are you saying? Oh, that tax assessor value is way high. I'm not going by that. And it's like you want it to be low when you're the one paying taxes. You want it to be high when you're the one trying to sell your house or value the house or whatever. But the tax assessor value, it's a data point. And you got to get a lot of data points. You get that metric. So you write down what the Zillow says. You write down what the tax assessor says. You ask a friend, hey, what do you think this house is worth? Drive by it. Tell me what you think. You ask another investor. You get in a circle of investors or you get on the real estate investors group and you say, hey, what do y'all think this house is worth or whatever. You find an agent. If you haven't yet worked with an agent, whether a seller's agent or a buyer's agent, you need to find those and put them on your team and you can say, Matthew, what do you think this house is worth? And then he'll give you the quick and dirty, here's what I think right fast, or maybe I'll do a little bit deeper analysis on comps, or maybe I'll do a full CMA if I really want to earn your business as a seller's agent. But you get those numbers and every single one of them is a data point. Remember I said earlier, bring salt. Bring salt when you're talking about values as well. And then you take all those data points and you start thinking, okay, somewhere around about here is what this house is worth. You could be off by $5,000 or $10,000. What you don't want to be is off by $20,000 or $30,000 or $50,000 or $100,000. Like you don't want to be so far off that it completely sinks the ship and then you lose money on that investment, maybe even file bankruptcy kind of thing. So know your ARV and dial in so that you have a very conservative estimate on the lower end, so to speak, at least as you start to do your math. All right, you need to know things like renovation costs. Now, who in here is a contractor, whether formally or informally? In some capacity, you've done some contracting work, okay? Not very many. I think one hand went up in addition to mine. I'm not a contractor. All right, so, so you're going to flip all of our houses now. Right, so if you don't know how to calculate renovation costs, that is a huge stumbling block for you in, for instance, flipping or buying rentals or buying real estate investments that may need some work. Because if you can't assume a particular dollar amount or a range, a margin of error in how much it's going to take to renovate a property, you could really lose your lunch. I mean, it could be really, really bad if you walk into a house and you'd be like, wow, there's $10,000 worth of work in here. And then you get halfway through it and it's 30. Guess who that's happened to? You know, it's one of those, ask me how I know. Like, we've missed the mark on a bunch of rentals, on a bunch of rehabs, I mean. I missed one by over $100,000. And it sucks. Not because of, like, I don't know how to calculate renovation costs. It was just one of those things where, oh no, there's foundational problems, or this costs more than you anticipated, but so did everything else, and the distance from the house because it was out in the county and all this kind of stuff. But you got to know how to calculate renovation costs. Couple little tips. Work with contractors. You can pay them $100 usually to just go walk a house. Hey, go walk this house. Tell me what it's going to cost to renovate it. Usually if you pay them $100 and you don't buy the house, that's great. They made their $100. If you do buy the house, they'll usually credit that $100 towards the cost of them getting the job to renovate the house and things like that. Build your team, put contractors and subs on it, use them to help you calculate renovation costs. Once you've done 5, 6, 10 houses or whatever, you'll be able to know. When I walk in a house, I know about how much I'm going to spend on that house. The problem is I've got to then teach my acquisitions manager because I'm not going in every house. Or if you're sending your business partner and you're going to trust them to walk the house, like, you got to know, how am I calculating these renovation costs? Don't use forms online that have dollars auto-populated. Use the forms that have no dollars auto-populated but have things to look for. So you can find something that says roof, HVAC, foundation, paint, carpet, blah, 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 all these things, and then you fill in the numbers based on current market data from subs in this market today. Don't find something online that says carpet, $1 a square foot, because it's not. And you can't just multiply that times a square foot kind of thing. But anyway, you gotta figure out how to calculate renovation costs. And once you've made a couple of mistakes in calculating renovation costs, you'll get pretty good at it. You will get good at it. But you got to know how to do that. You want to be able to calculate acquisition costs. This is something that really frustrates me when I talk to particularly wholesalers. And I'm not going to throw anything at the ones that are in the room. I might, but I'm not going to right now. But when they calculate data on what a house is going to make you, they often leave out this one. Buying a house costs money, not just the purchase price, but it costs money to close. Like, we're one of the most cost-effective title companies in town, but it still costs money. Like, it's still a business, it's still a service. Title insurance is still a thing, and it still costs money. So there's things related to acquisition of a property that can't be overlooked. Acquisition costs, especially if you're borrowing money to be able to buy it. It used to be, and this was super early on when I was doing this several years ago, where I would use like F&M Bank, and they were letting me do like 10% down, and then they would finance 90% of the loan and 100% of the remodel, which was fantastic. So I had to come up with, like, you know, $8,000 or $12,000 or whatever, and they financed the rest of it. Great return on investment in that context, but I averaged something like 3.3% going to F&M for that loan, between origination fees and appraisals and doc prep and doc review of the doc prep and doc prep of the review of the doc prep, and like all these different $50, $100, $200 fees that just kept getting added on. And it was great. Wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. Thank you, F&M. You've been amazing to me and my family. I love you. But, you know, those kinds of things, they add up. So if you think about, well, I'm going to buy this house, you know, my brother brings it to me for $200,000. You can't be like, all right, 200 plus the renovation, and that's all I got in it. Because you didn't account for the fact that you've got acquisition costs on there. You're going to do prorated taxes. You got all these different things that you get factored in. So what do? How do I figure out acquisition costs? Well, on the money side, you talk to your lender and figure out how much you got to bring to the table. And on the title side, you call Heidi or Melanie at Apex. You say, hey, if I'm buying this house at $200, can you run the preliminary for me? And bam, they'll run the preliminary for you. You say, well, I want a title insurance policy. They plug it into the calculator to tell you how much the title policy is, and you just know. As a general rule of thumb, after you've done it a few times, you can kind of assume, and it's maybe 3 or 4% of the purchase that might be that you spend in acquisition costs. And just like the ARV, you're trying to get some margin of error. You're trying to get a window. Here's about what the ARV is going to be. Renovation costs. Here's about what the renovation costs are going to be. You can do the same thing with the acquisition costs. You plug that in acquisition costs. Now you know here's about what it's going to cost me to get it. All right, while I own it. What do I spend money on while I own a house? Tell me. What'd you say, lawyers? Oh, I thought you said lawyers. Don't serve me again. Mortgage, so you're spending money on the debt service, right? principal and interest, or potentially interest only. It depends on, the nature of your loan. What else? I got caught on that one thing. What else? All right, insurance. Got to pay insurance on that house. Don't forget. There have been times where I go home after having taken the picture with Heidi or Melanie at Apex, and I'm like, all right, I got another. I didn't put insurance on the house. And then it's like, go back to work, email, make a phone call, and you just got to figure it out. But now I've got a to-do list. And every time I'm going to buy a house, dang, now I got to email you the to-do list. I open a file, and then I staple the to-do list at the front of the file. And in that, it's got my checklist of things to do. Send the contract to Apex. I need to put down the earnest money. I got to blah, blah, blah. And I'll go ahead and email my insurance agent. Hey, I'm closing on this house. Here's the nature of the house. Value of the house, renovations I'm going to put into the house, the entity in which I'm buying the house, the closing date for the house. Schedule for me to have insurance on that day. And then also on the to-do list is right before closing or maybe at closing, I'll go ahead and email them again and be like, hey, we closed or we're about to close or whatever. So insurance is huge. What else do I have in holding costs? Utilities. Roll-offs, yeah, for sure. Huh? All right, maintenance, things that I'm going to take care of along the way. Yeah. Maybe roll some of that into renovation costs, but yeah. Lawn mowing. One thing that I almost never, by the way, Tyler, Twin Rivers Turf, mows lawns for us, among a million other things. But one thing that I would often forget to calculate is every time we got to mow. And so say you're going to flip a house, and you're calculating how much my holding costs are. Well, if you're flipping a house and it's going to take you 3 months to renovate it, and it's probably going to take another 3 months to get it to a closing by the time you got it staged and photographed and listed and marketed and then contracted and then appraised, and then it falls through, and then you get another one, and then it sells. You got this house for 6 months. Some of that is in the summer. You got to mow, right? So you factor that in. It seems like a negligible cost, but it's legit, especially if you've got, more than an acre and a half kind of thing. Anything else? Nothing jumps out at me, but you get the idea. You got to factor in those kinds of things, so you need to be able to know your holding costs. What about disposition costs? What are disposition costs? The opposite of acquisition costs. Now, what are disposition costs? All right, it's the cost to get rid of the property, the cost to dispose of the property. So if I'm buying a flip, now remember I'm talking a lot about rentals here just a little bit. We're talking about flips now. If I'm buying a house in order to flip it, and you've got a wholesaler who emails you, and I'm not picking on them, there's some bad ones, not necessarily in this room, but there's some people who will be like, you could buy it at $200, sell it at $250, you got $50,000 of profit margin. You know what I forgot in that? Renovation costs, acquisition costs, holding costs, disposition costs, and guess what? That's like $49,000. I'd made nothing. But so you got to remember the disposition costs. So if you can figure out your ARV, which I think is the first thing that you do, you got to think about what are my disposition costs. Number one, you want to think about your seller's agent. Your seller's agent who might even discount his commission if he works with you because he works with a lot of investors and he really enjoys that. But say your disposition cost for seller's commission, 5, 6, 7%, whatever that might be. What if you stage it? If it's a nice flip, you might stage it. You got to get pictures or whatever else it is that you're going to do. You got disposition costs. You might even have seller-paid concessions. If you're doing seller-paid concessions, that's usually 1% or 2 or 3, depending on what the market's doing and what people are demanding and that kind of thing. You got your own prorated taxes and insurance and whatever other things that you might pay, closing costs and so forth. Seller-side closing costs are still going to be $500, $600, $700, even if you're not agreeing to pay for theirs. So you got all these disposition costs. Now, what does all that mean? Why am I making such a big deal about this? What do you tie to all of these things? Yeah, it's all tied to your profits. It's all tied to your bottom line. Because if this goes up by $1,000, guess what goes down by $1,000? Your profits. And so what you're plugging in here is your desired profits. If you ignore the assignment fee for a minute, if you plug in your desired profits in your calculation, and let's say I want to make 20 grand on this flip or $1 million on this flip or whatever it might be, put your number in there. My threshold for a flip, by the way, is like $25,000 because I'm going to spend about half of that in taxes, self-employment taxes, short-term capital gains, or whatever else it might be. So you're going to lose about half of that to taxes. That's not tax advice, by the way. I'm just telling you this is what I do. So if you're going to lose about half of it, it needs to be a big enough profit margin for it to be worthwhile. So let's say you don't get out of bed for more than $25,000. You're going to put $25,000 in that desired profit. Well, if this goes up by 1,000, and that goes up by 1,000, and that goes up by 500, and that goes up by 10,000, where does that money come from? It comes out of your profit margins, right? Every dollar that you have to pay is a dollar that you don't get to keep. But you got to know these numbers. You got to know what your desired profit is. You may have a lower threshold than me. You may have a higher threshold than me. It doesn't matter. Figure it out. Why would you want to build in a number for an assignment fee, by the way? Well, if you're a wholesaler, you want to know the desired profit for your investor buyer, your assignee. And if you're the wholesaler, you want to know what your assignment fee is going to be. You're going to build that in before you decide what you're going to offer on a house and so forth. So let's keep going. Flip analysis. Anybody need a picture of that or anything else on that? Speak up or forever hold your peace kind of thing. So in your flip analysis, here's what we're going to do. We're going to assume a $300,000 ARV. Now, this is not a particular house that I have or that I've done. These are just random numbers that I pulled up. When we do the rental analysis here in about, man, we're running out of time. I'm going to use an actual example. So you got a $300,000 ARV and a $40,000 renovation. There are two main ways to analyze what is your MAO. Tell me what that is. All right, your maximum allowable offer, your MAO. An easy way is to say, well, I'm going to figure out the ARV, multiply it times 70%, and subtract repairs. So if you think about 70% of the ARV minus repairs being your MAO, if you do that, you're doing what a lot of people do when they do the shorthand, quick and dirty math on what I'm willing to pay for a property. What I'm willing to pay. Remember, we're talking about a flip analysis. What I'm willing to pay such that it's got sufficient margins for me to make money. Now, the way that math cranks out, 300,000 times 70% is 210. Minus 40, I get to 170,000 MAO. Now, to the people who are not engaging in the investing of real estate, they're going to look at that and be like, my $300,000 house, you want to pay $170,000 for, and you're going to get kicked out of the room, you're going to get laughed at, the door slammed in the face, and the phone hung up 100 times. But on that 101st time that you ask, if I could buy the house at 170, knowing that you're going to put $40,000 into it and the holding costs and acquisition costs, disposition costs, and all that kind of stuff, and then sell it at 300, that 101st time you might be able to get a yes, right? But that's how people typically do the numbers for the easy way. This is especially prominent when you're talking with wholesalers because that creates a big enough margin for them to be able to wholesale it and you still be able to make money. This is not how I do it. I wouldn't even do it at 75%. At 75%, that number gets marginally higher than 170. I like to do a harder number calculation with actual numbers, and it's going to look something like this. By the way, I'm not that good at PowerPoint. I don't know if y'all noticed that. Did you notice it's a chalkboard? I usually like doing this on a dry erase board, and I'm literally cranking this out. But I don't have a good way of doing this math other than to just put them up on the board like bullets. So humor me for a minute. The numbers look like this. If I've got the $300,000 ARV, I'm sketching out on my pad $300,000 ARV minus disposition costs. That is the first thing that I'm going to take off the top because no matter what, you're going to spend some money when you sell that house. Now, your agent might charge you 5%. Just saying. So your agent might charge you 7%. Okay, your disposition costs might include concessions because the market might have all these other sellers advertising concessions. They're giving away 4%, right? So whatever those numbers are, you got to factor that in. In this hypothetical, it's just 10%. And I think that's a good rule. A lot of people would do 11% because that also adds into it those last-minute repair requests that are such a nightmare for sellers. So anytime I've ever sold a house, basically anything, any house, you're going to sell the house and the buyer's going to do their inspections and they're going to say, we want you to fix this, this, and this. Guess what? That's not free. That goes into your disposition costs. So even if you've got a discount on, say, your sales commissions or your closing costs at Apex, you might be able to, factor that in and still be under 10%. But anyway, so let's say it's $300,000 minus $30,000 minus, let's just assume that renovation that I said a minute ago, $40,000 minus some holding costs. Now, I didn't tell you what a holding cost number would be, but if I were, I would say $1,500 a month. On a $3,000 house, your holding costs might be around $1,500 a month, maybe more, depends on the nature of your loan. If that's an interest-only loan, it's probably $1,500 a month. By the time you pay interest, taxes, insurance, blah, 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 If it's a P&I loan, it might be $2,000 or whatever else. So you got to factor that in. Here, I've got in my mind 4 months, $1,500 a month of cutting the grass and all of that. That's my holding cost. And then I've got $3,500 in acquisition costs. Now, why $3,500? I don't know. It was a round number, and I just thought I'd put it in there. Minus my desired profit. In this hypothetical, I put $30,000 just so that I could get at a number. I told you a little while ago my threshold might be $25,000. Wouldn't get out of bed for $25,000, but a bigger flip should justify more money. So maybe you push that desired profit up. My acquisitions manager, a guy sent me a house the other day. Acquisitions manager goes to it yesterday. He sends me the pictures of it today. It's gutted to studs. And I'm like, the desired profit margins on a house like that, they just need to be higher because it's going to take longer, you're going to hold it longer, there's more risk and all these kinds of things. So in this hypothetical of that $30,000 desired profit, which has my MAO of 190. Okay? Now, why would I want to do it this way rather than the other way? All right, I'm way more competitive. Because if two people come to the table and one of them says, I'll do 75 or 70% minus repairs, 70% of ARV minus repairs, and then I come in and I do this, my offer is $20,000 higher than theirs. Who's going to get the house? And I'm going to get the house a lot more often. Now, what really sucks is some people are doing 80% of ARV minus repairs. Or some people, contractors who are doing the work themselves, they can pay $210 because they're not paying a contractor $20,000. I have to pay the contractor $20,000. They might do the work themselves. So there's those kinds of factors as well. Plus, there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of competition in the room. Y'all and I are bidding against each other on houses. And I'm literally teaching you how to do it. I don't know why I'm doing this, but I do know why I'm doing this. And I love it. But if my bid is that much higher, I'm probably going to get more houses, get more deals, sell more houses, make more money, and so on and so forth. And so you want to run harder numbers. And the harder you can dial into those numbers, the better you're going to be, the more competitive you're going to be. And if I can figure out a way to get my dispo costs down, if I can figure out how to get my reno costs down, and so on and so forth, then that MAO either goes up or I just keep more money in the profit margin. Does that make sense to everybody? Does anybody have any questions about that? This is like the everything is perfect scenario. This is everything goes well. By the way, in real estate, nothing goes well. Literally nothing goes well. It sucks from the minute you start to the minute you're done and every step along the way, except at the end you might be able to make some money. But it is an absolute nightmare. Flipping a house has so many pitfalls, so much room for error, so many nightmares. I mean, even if you've got the team built out and all the different things, we need to have another class where I just spend an hour talking about all the ways that it sucks. I want to write the opposite, like poor dad, where it's like, here's everything that can go wrong, but at the end of the day, if this panned out even close to this, what if I'm half wrong? What happens? I made $15,000. I mean, if you handed me $15,000 right now, I'll be like, okay, that's pretty cool, thanks. It's not zero, it's not negative, it's still good money. And if you don't get the house because maybe you bid $500 higher than the next person or whatever, that's okay. You bid on another one and 99 more of them just like that, and you just keep trying. But this, to me, this is Eric Yow's theory. This is how I analyze a flip, and I'll analyze every single one of them like this. And I'll make offers and bids on, 50 for every one that I get, or 20 for every one that I get, a whole bunch of them. Now, if you were going to do the exact same thing, but try to wholesale, which is a different thing, wholesalers are going to do something like this, adding this line to get that. Do you see the difference? So really all a wholesaler is doing in this context is they're building in what their desired assignment fee is. So they're thinking of you here, and they're thinking of themselves here to get to this number. Now, these numbers are not true at all. Usually it's inverted, isn't it? Don't lie. Don't lie. Don't lie. They want to make 30 on the assignment fee, and you make $10,000, and that really sucks. That ticks me off so bad. You go through all the energy and work of flipping a house, and, your contractor quits, and you got to find somebody else. You got an insurance claim, and a tree falls on, all this kind of stuff, and everything goes bad. At the end of the day, you made $12,000. You're like, thank the good Lord, I made $12,000, and it's gone. And the deed gets recorded when you're sold and gone. You're going to go back and look at it to verify, and you see what they sold it to you at. you know, and they made 50 on the assignment fee, and you're like, I actually don't care. That sucks, but I don't care. I don't care what the wholesaler makes. Why would I not care what the wholesaler makes? Because if it meets my criteria and they made $100,000, I don't care. Because my criteria don't have the predicate of their criteria, right? I don't care what they make. It does kind of burn you a little bit if they didn't leave that much meat on the bone. If there's $100,000 in equity and you got 10 of it, you know, that kind of chaps you the wrong way a little bit. But this is not a commentary about that. This is about what the numbers look like. And if you're wholesaling, you know, your MAO might be $180,000. And if you wholesale it and somebody pays $195 and you made 15 and they made 25 on the flip, that's great. Everybody makes money. Just leave enough meat on the bone for everybody else. All right, let's talk about finding the deal. Any questions about any of that other stuff? We're going to run so long, and I hate it. If you've got to leave, just leave. But I'm going to keep going until I'm literally done with this PowerPoint. Finding the deal. Finding the deal is 100% the hardest part. So I wanted to bridge from flipping into renting with this kind of in the middle because it deals with both. Finding the deal specifically and talking about flipping might have your mind going in one particular direction. If you're looking at renting, finding the deal might take you another direction, but this kind of blends into both sides of that equation. Finding the deal, you can find things on the MLS from time to time. You can find foreclosures that are listed on the MLS from time to time. It's not as prominent now of a strategy, but it used to be that you just go and bid on these foreclosures or go to all these foreclosure auctions. It seems to me, at least my feeling is, there's less of those now than there were 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago when I first started doing it. It used to be in 2017, part of the way that I got some of the deals in 2017 when I started is I would make an offer on every foreclosure that comes across my desk. You set up a drip with your agent, right? Or whoever else is in the room that's an agent. You set up a drip so that those foreclosures come to you via email, and then you decide, I want to make an offer on this one, and here's what my offer is. You make the offer and you do your thing. And I would make 50 offers and I'd get one house, or 100 offers and I'd get 3 houses or whatever. But you might find things like that on the MLS. You might find, for instance, fixer-uppers, handyman special, things like that, things that have 274 days on market that are still on the market. You might be able to come in, swoop in, and get at a good price, things like that. There's a ton of mechanisms out there for lead gen. Lead gen is just something where it's like a good website that captures somebody's attention, maybe a pay-per-click, which I'll mention in a minute, that says, you know, we pay cash for houses. You know, put your address in and we'll give you an offer. Well, that address comes in. That company is just getting leads. And then they'll sell them to you and you'll pay $300 a pop for those leads or whatever. And if you buy 10 leads and you spend $300 a pop, you spend $3,000 on those leads. Maybe one works. But on that one, maybe you made $30,000. Was it good enough? That's pretty good to me. So lots of lead gen opportunities out there. Wholesalers, network with a lot of them, get on buyers lists and things like that. Agents' pocket listings, the more you're talking about real estate investing with people, the more you're talking about it with agents. An agent may literally just have something come across their desk, and maybe they're not an investor. And then if they think of you and you're the call they make, you're the one that gets that deal in front of you before everybody else if they happen to have that pocket listing. If you don't know what a pocket listing is, Google it. We're moving on. Other investors, network with other investors because there's a ton of opportunities that other investors are passing on, myself included. So opportunities will come across my desk that may not meet my criteria, but maybe they meet yours. Maybe I wouldn't get out of bed for less than 25 grand on a flip. Maybe you're at 20. And so, bam, I can just hand it to you. Maybe you pay me a referral. Maybe we work it together or some other mechanism. Maybe you just close it at Apex because I gave it to you. Driving for dollars, huge one, huge one. Who knows what driving for dollars is? Knocking for dollars, knocking doors, right? So driving for dollars is just a fun way of saying I'm driving down the road. I see this house. Grass has grown up past the windowsills. Gutters are falling off. Trees are overtaking the roof. Roof, by the way, is barely even there. And there's a gravel driveway with all the grass growing up through it. And it just looks like it's not well kept. Write down that address. Put it in your little notebook. Keep on driving. You find another one. Hey, there's another one. Write down that address. There's another one. Write down that address. Hey, there's one. This is good. You better write this down. There's a handicap ramp that goes up to the front door. It's looking a little raggedy. What does that mean? You got an old person who's probably dead or nearly dead, and maybe somebody's inherited that house. I'm not trying to knock dead people. We're all going to do it. But, those handicap ramps, they usually come in nearing the end of somebody's life. So you got those kinds of things. You're driving, looking at these houses, and some of these things, these light bulbs are going to go off, and you're going to write down these addresses. And then you might get an app like Deal Machine or something else that might run. You might be able to plug that in and figure out who owns that house. Maybe it's the person who's living there, and you can literally knock on the door, which is a great strategy for our fun guys in the house. But anyway, so they might not live there. It might be a rental house, and it's a tenant there. Anyway, and you track down who owns it, and you go to their house. I wanted a piece of farmland that this guy had. He wouldn't answer my phone calls, and I'd send him letters, and he wouldn't answer my letters. And I figured out where he lived. I showed up at his house one day, and he's on the lawnmower. He was so mad at first, but he recognized like the audacity, but also the desire, where it's like, you're going to come to my house? And he was actually trying to escape his creditors. I found him. He didn't sell me the farmland. But it was a really cool exercise of finding somebody and literally just showing up at their house. And like, I'm knocking on the door, he's on the mower out back, and the lady won't come to the door. He comes around and we'll have the conversation. It was a really interesting experience. But that kind of thing, there's been just as many occasions when I find the house or I find the person, and they are willing to sell the house. I bought a piece of land out in Palmyra where it was landlocked. I bought it as a foreclosure that was on market. And it was like, why isn't anybody buying this? I bought it. I'm renting it. It's making money. I've got $100,000 in equity in that house. I can't believe y'all didn't buy that, and I got that. But anyway, so I get this house, but it's landlocked. That's probably why nobody bought it. So what do you do with the 2 acres that's in front of it that's keeping me from being that's making me landlocked, and I have to drive on that property? You got an easement basically. You're driving across the 2 acres. Man, if I could buy that 2 acres, it's a dead person. I track down the nearest relative. White Pages Premium is a good place to be able to skip trace some people. I found somebody who actually picked up the phone. Oh, I know who that is. Here's their cell phone number. And they just give away people's cell phone number. Please don't give away my cell phone number. Anyway, so I get their cell phone number, and they're like, whoa, we were just talking about what to do with that 2 acres back in Clarksville. And I'm like, I know what you can do. Sell it to me. They sell it to me. I subdivide. I move some lot lines around. Now I'm not landlocked, and I can build a house on this and all of that. Anyway, driving for dollars. That kind of stuff, super, super cool. I started mentioning things like Deal Machine and other apps. There's tons of apps that you can get, but these apps, and you can subscribe to services that you can literally plug in an address that will tell you lots of cool stuff. If you're an agent, that CRS data, will give you a lot of stuff as well. Let's see, and then your own marketing. I'm going to go to the next one. Your own marketing could include mailers. Who in here does any form of direct mail campaign? Just a couple of you, a couple agents. You get the card in the mail. Hey, here's what houses are looking like in your neighborhood as far as dispositions or whatever. Same kind of thing. If you're a wholesaler or if you're a real estate investor, you can send those mailer campaigns. I use Rocket Mail, I think. Postcard Mania. I think it's the same company. Who calls our office all the time? Postcard Mania. All right. They're always like, are you ready to start your campaign? I'm like, quit calling. When I'm ready, I'll call you. But anyway, so Postcard Mania, places like that, you can send postcards. Yellow Letters HQ, you can send the little yellow letters and stuff like that. Have y'all ever gotten a letter or card in the mail that says, we buy houses? Yeah, that's me. Now, that's people like us. You should be doing that or could be doing that. That's another mechanism that would be, an arrow in your quiver, so to speak, a thing that you can do for marketing. One of the things that I've done that was massively successful on the mailer side, PowerPoint, massively successful. Last year, I wanted to buy a lake house. I bought 3 lake houses, and I'll tell you how I did it. It's so good. So I get on the CRS data that realtors have access to, and I go and highlight every house that touched water in the lake area that I wanted to buy a house. And I get a list, and it's like 2,500 addresses. And I wrote a letter, I typed a letter, and I had a picture of my family on there, and I was like, I always wanted a lake house. I really want to buy a lake house. I just sold a piece of piece of land that we had, and now I'm looking to buy a lake house because I wanted to do a 1031 in a lake house. And so I send this letter that looks like I wrote it to Aubrey. I did what's called word merge in Word, so it looks like I wrote it, Dear Aubrey, I want to buy you. I found that you have a lake house. I want to buy your lake house. Signed, Eric Yao. Here's a picture of my family who's way cuter than me. And I send that letter, and you think I wrote it just to you, and you're like, dang, that is the sweetest thing I've ever seen. I'm going to call this guy on his cell number and tell him I want to sell him my house. And I got calls like crazy. It was ridiculous. And I'm like, dang, stop. It was the best marketing strategy that I have ever employed, and I'm just telling you, this is the thing to do. This is how to do it. So I do this, and I didn't want to buy 3 lake houses, but I wound up having this list of a dozen or so lake houses that were actually viable, and even more than that in terms of lots or land that people were selling around the lake. I didn't want to buy land because when you buy land around the lake, you wind up just having land around the lake forever, and you never do anything with it, and then you get a letter from somebody and you try to sell them the lot. I didn't want to buy the lot because you get stuck with them or whatever if you don't do something with it. But I did want a lake house. So Tyler and I and some other friends, like we take these trips and we go look at all these lake houses or whatever. And instead of buying a lake house, I was like, well, let me buy 3. Why? I want to diversify. I'll short-term rent all 3 of them. If one doesn't work, I'll dump it, keep the other 2. If 3 don't work, I'll dump all of them because I bought with equity because I meet my criteria that we'll talk about. But anyway, great strategy. There's no reason you couldn't do a strategy like that or come up with something even more creative. All right, let's keep going. Cold calls, mailers, text campaigns, email campaigns. I don't really like those. Pay-per-clicks, we've done a lot of that. Social media campaigns, obviously social media ads. I'm not a TikTok famous kind of guy. Like I don't want to be in your face in a reel every day. But there are a lot of people who can do that and have really good success with that. Some people look better on social media than I think I do. Radio, TV, apps, that kind of thing, and driving for dollars. Definitely do the driving for dollars things. I actually experimented spending about $1,000 a month on radio. Hey, Eric, yeah, we buy houses. And I didn't have a good success rate with that. But then you see like Tennessee home buyers, they're on the TV regularly, at least when I'm at the Mexican restaurant and I see them on the television, their ads. So there's got to be something to that. So thinking about what you can spend money on. What you don't spend money on is word of mouth. And if you're talking to everybody about real estate, then that is going to be marketing for you and deals will come across your desk. You get online and you post on socials, I'm looking to buy a piece of real estate, I want to invest in my future, I want to buy a rental, I want to get into flipping or whatever it is, and you just start plugging away. Tell everybody you know. All right, y'all ready for rental analysis? This is where I really have some fun. When you're analyzing a rental, you can do it the right way, you can do it the wrong way, and everything in between. People will say when you talk about rentals, oh, why would you want to do a rental? And what do they say? What do they tell you? The renters are going to tear up your property. And they will, and they do, and it sucks, and I hate it. And I spend tons and tons and tons of money on repairs and maintenance. I spend tons of money on vacancy, just in lost revenue. And there are so many things about rentals that absolutely suck. But the long-term wealth building strategy is in keeping houses, not selling houses. This is my opinion. You can flip a house, and let's say you made that hypothetical $30,000. You lose half of that in taxes, let's say. You made $15,000. Your net worth goes up by how much? $15,000. If you kept it, your net worth went up by whatever your profit was, $30,000, plus your disposition cost that you saved, which was $30,000. So your net worth goes up by $60,000. So in that flip analysis that I gave earlier, if I had that $300,000 ARV house and I flipped it, my net worth goes up by $15,000. If I kept it as a rental, hypothetically, my net worth just went up by $60,000. Now, it doesn't mean I'm going to keep every house where there is that equity because it may negative cash flow and things like that. But the key to building your net worth is in keeping the houses, not getting rid of the houses. I teach wholesalers this all the time. Like, you're assigning me this house. Why don't you just buy it? Well, maybe they don't have the credit or they don't have the bankability or whatever it is. Maybe they don't want to rental house because renters tear up their property and all these other things. But if you're trying to build your net worth, if you're trying to grow in that capacity, you need to build a rental portfolio. So analyze the property as a rental. I tell you, analyze everything every way. So analyze whatever deal comes across your desk like it's going to be a flip. Analyze it like it's a wholesale, analyze it like it's a wholetail, analyze it like it's a rental, or any other creative thing that you can do with it, a partnership or otherwise. And if you analyze every deal every way, you will figure out a way, hopefully, to make it make sense. To the degree that to you it makes sense as a rental, that's when we can start walking down this line of how do we analyze it as a rental? How do we do the math? How do we run it? And what would make a good rental? One of the things I want to make sure I include this. I hate it when people say, oh, this would make such a great rental. Have y'all ever heard that? If you've ever talked to a real estate agent who doesn't do investing, and you say, I'm looking at this house potentially as a rental, and they say, oh, this would make a great rental. Usually what they mean by that is, I really want to sell this house. They also might mean this house is in a depressed area, and so it would make a great rental. Or this house is really cute, so it would make a great rental. Or this house is relatively small compared to the quantity of bedrooms, so it would make a great rental. None of those things make it make a great rental. None of those things matter at all. So being cute doesn't make it a great rental. Being small or in a depressed area makes it a great rental. What makes a house a great rental? All right. Money, right? The RTI, the rent to investment ratio, a good return on investment. The numbers, this is what I'm putting up on the board. The numbers make it a great rental. And that's really all it comes down to. And if you know the numbers, you can evaluate the property and know that this would not make a great rental. So for instance, you call I call this really sweet, I don't know how better to say it, but just adorable little, I don't know how to word this. A new real estate agent who was just, that kind of, and she's got this $240,000 listing or whatever, and she's like, this would make a great rental, and it's like, you don't know anything. And I was super nice. She was in one of my classes, we talked about it, and she's like, I think this listing of mine would make a great rental. Well, it wouldn't, because it's a $240,000 ARV that's listed at $240,000. So for one thing, whoever buys it is not buying it with equity. And that $240,000 house might rent for $1,000 or $1,200 or whatever it was at the time. And the RTI on that's going to be like 0.5%. Like that's not a good rental as far as the numbers are concerned. Now, if you're trying to park $240,000 and that's your prerogative, sure. You could park $240,000 there. You could park in the stock market. You could bury it in a box in the backyard if you felt like it. Say that 3 times fast. But that's not necessarily what makes it a great rental if it's just cute or small or in a depressed area. It's the numbers. So you've got to know the numbers. Now, how do you start? Earlier we started with the ARV when we're talking about flipping. What I start with in a rental is the 1% rule. If you don't know what the 1% rule is, read the book. But the 1% rule that you can read all kinds of articles and see all kinds of videos about are basically 1% of the investment, not the ARV, 1% of the investment is the desired rental amount for a given project or a given piece of investment. I like even the 0.8% rule, but you'll see how that plays out here in just a few minutes. The 1% rule would look something like this. If you found a $160,000 investment, I don't care what it's worth. You might get it at 50% of value. It might be a $300,000 house that you find at $160,000. But if you find a $160,000 house that rents for $1,600, I'm going to buy that one and 1,000 more just like it, okay? I want every single house that I can find that meets this criteria that's not in a war zone. You know what I mean by that? Let me stop. A class, B class, C class, D class. Anytime you're ever talking to me or listening to me or us doing a class, those are the classes of real estate. And then you got plus and minus. So A plus or A plus plus is like top tier, you're talking Stonehenge or above. Farmington when it's not underwater, nice houses, $500,000 plus houses or whatever is A class and up, A plus plus, whatever. B class is like your typical nice house, 300 to 500 maybe in Clarksville. It's going to be your B class, B plus on the higher end, B minus on the lower end kind of thing. There's a lot of B minus rentals in town that are on the cusp of maybe being cash flow positive, but probably not. And then you got your C plus. C plus is, I think, the sweet spot because you got C class neighborhoods, so C class prices, but they're a little nicer and maybe generate a little bit more rent. Then you got your C minus, so you got your, Tobacco Road kind of houses. I've got some C minus over there in that kind of area that are lightly depressed, but not quite Heart of New Providence depressed. And then you got your D class. D class might be, some areas of Beach Street, Plum Street, East Street kind of thing. Not the newly built side of things, but like the particularly rough areas, you can think of those. And then you've got some that are what would call war zone that don't even get a letter. You know, you got ABCD war zone. And so in my mind, I'm going to buy as many C or C plus properties as I can. I'll buy C minus. Rarely would I buy a D plus. I've got a D plus on Wall Street, which I think is now a C minus. By the way, I think it's coming up a little bit around Daniel Street, Wall Street, Richardson Street, things like that. And then what's that one? Anyway, it doesn't matter. All right, so if you could find something that's renting at 1%, you're going to buy that all day. Who in here would buy that house? All day. All day. Now, it's easy to sit in a class and be like, well, those don't exist. You're right. You probably should not invest in real estate, and I'll take it from here, okay? Because I'm on the hunt. I'm on a mission. I'm going to go find those houses, and when I do, I'm going to buy every single one of them. The reality is, and I'm candid with everybody, it's really hard to find those houses. It's exceptionally difficult to find those houses unless they're in depressed areas, because you can go back and look at that 160 and 1600 and you can say 80 and 800. And there are houses in depressed areas that you can buy for 80 that might rent for 800, but then you're going to be fixing stuff constantly, and it's just in a depressed area, so the crime rate's high and that kind of thing. All right, so then look at this, 220 investment, renting at 1760. It would be tolerable, I think, if we put the debt service on it properly, and that's at a 0.8%. And then you got 260 investment renting at 1,300. That's a low return on investment, even without debt, with a 0.5% rent to investment ratio. The percentages, that's not RTI, that's not ROI, that's RTI, so rent to investment ratio. Rent, 1,300 to the investment, 260, that's a 0.5% rent to investment ratio. If you buy manufactured homes, particularly in depressed areas, you might get as high as like 2%. I know guys that have deals where they've paid $30,000 for a thing that rents for $900 a month. That's a 3% rent to investment ratio. You're buying for cash flow right there, not appreciation or several other things. All right, but it also works backwards. So I just cut and pasted that at the top, go to where it works backwards. 1,600 divided by 1% is 160, and I'll put the other two. Why would you want to be able to do it backwards? All right, I'm looking at what offer I'm going to make. If I look at this house and my friend or agent or whoever says, oh, that would make a cute rental, well, how much would it rent for? What do you think? And somebody might say, oh, this will rent for $1,600 or this will rent for $500 or whatever. You just divide by your threshold, whatever your RTI threshold is, and if mine's 0.8 or 1% or whatever, you go 1,600 divided by 1%. I know that I can invest as much as 160 in this particular house. And so you need to know your expected rent in your analysis. Just like the ARV, if you don't know the ARV on a flip, you don't even need to be playing the game. If you're looking at rentals and you don't know what a house would rent for, you don't need to be playing the game. How do you figure out what things would rent for? You can go to all the websites, Zillow or Truly or whatever, things, apartments.com, obviously the MLS, and places like that where you can find things that are renting in the area. There is another one, hotpads.com. I haven't looked at that in a while. I assume it's still around. I used to enjoy looking at hotpads because you could get to a geographic area and see all the different houses that were listed in that area very easily, easier than on the MLS in my opinion. And you could be like, look, the one next door is listed for rent at $1,200 a month. I'm probably going to get $1,200 a month or thereabouts, give or take. And then you could divide by your criteria, your rent to investment criteria, and go forward. So this one is an actual house of mine, not the address, but the numbers. And so I wanted to throw this out there at you. We're going to do some actual math on an actual house that I own, that I bought. We're calling it 123 Main Street. I could have told you it was 1817 Needmore, but the purchase price was $150,000. I rounded these numbers, by the way, don't hate. 150, they weren't exactly 0, 0, 0, 0. $150,000 purchase price plus $2,000 acquisition fee. It cost me about $4,000 for the refi. Now, the reason I didn't lump that in with the $2,000 is because I wanted you to see that I was doing the BRRRR strategy, which you should know, the buy, renovate, refinance, buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat, whatever that BRRRR acronym is. I mean, I do it, I just don't know what the acronym is. But so I wanted you to see that I'm doing this because I'm not taking out a loan on the front end, I'm taking out a loan when I refinance it. So I pay cash, Cost me $2,000 to buy it, so I'm out the door, let's say at 152, and then I refinance, and I don't remember what the refinance was. Maybe I refinanced 70% loan to value or whatever it was, but the refi cost me about $4,000. That's $16,000 in reno. Cost me about $3,000 for the time that from the time that I bought it to the time that it was rented. It rented relatively quickly at $16,000 in reno. It wasn't that extensive of a reno, so I'm all in at 175 in this hypothetical that is actually a literal transaction that I did. Now you need to know the rents. I knew on the front end, and if you looked at my file on my to-do sheet, it says how much is it going to rent for. You open it up and it says $1,495, and I know that that house is going to rent for somewhere about $1,495. Just like if you miss the ARV on a flip, if you miss the rental numbers, you could really sink the ship. You could really cause some harm in your portfolio, cause some harm in your cash flow analysis. I'll give you a for instance. I had one that I thought I was going to buy it at $220. It was going to rent for $2,200, 1% rule. It's going to be fantastic. Hand it over to the property manager, go on about my day. I go buy more houses. I'm doing more things. And I guess I never sent the email, I want to rent for $2,200, and they rented it for $1,895. That's $300 shy of what I needed it to rent for. That was a huge kick in the teeth. That one wasn't very good at all, right? So I lost $300 in the cash flow on that. Now, time heals all wounds in love and real estate, I like to say, and so ultimately that one's going to be fine, just like this one turns out fine in the end. So the numbers look like this. I expected a rent of $1,495. I expected the ARV of $240. Even though I'm buying it as a rental, you still want to know the ARV, and I pegged it at $240. I actually pegged it at $250. It appraised at $240, but the numbers were good enough it didn't matter, so we're going to say ARV $240. The loan that I put on this, you can do the math on the loan to value, whatever percentage it was, but I only borrowed $125. I can't remember exactly why, but $125, and it was at 7% with a 30-year loan. And so in this, I was $50,000 out of pocket. Now that $50,000 out of pocket was the difference between what I took out of it at a refi, right, and then the cost that it took me to get there at the end of the day or whatever. So now I've put $50,000 of my own money in this. Well, how do I get $50,000? I don't have $50,000. Well, either wait until you do to do it this way, or figure out another way to do it. If you can flip a house and make $25,000, do that twice, get your 50, put it in a rental, and then grow up from there, and a million other things. We just don't have time for me to teach all of it. So here are the numbers. Again, not great at PowerPoint, but humor me. $1,495 a month in rent, minus the mortgage, minus the taxes, minus the insurance, the management fee, which if you build a portfolio, they'll usually give you a discount on the management fee. Mine's better than 10%, but I put it here just for your sake, minus a factor of repairs, maintenance, and vacancy, and then here's your cash flow. Repairs, maintenance, and vacancy, let's talk about that for a minute. So the repairs, maintenance, and vacancy could be any number of things, and it could vary depending on the nature of the property. Repairs is one thing, maintenance is one thing, vacancy is another thing. I'll tell you what it is. Repairs to me are while they're in the house. Repairs are when they get out of the house. Maintenance are while they're in the house. Vacancy is obviously it's vacant. And if you just allocated 5% loss to each of those things, you've got a pretty decent buffer. In my experience, the number is higher than that. Specifically when it's in property management and you've got somebody else spending your money on repairs and maintenance and somebody else handling the vacancy. Now, I think I have great managers, but it is what it is. My repairs, maintenance, and vacancy is higher than 15%, but I would still use that as a factor, as a mathematical function or formula here when you're doing this math. So $1,495 minus all those things, and then you get $114 a month in cash flow. Now, who's excited about making $114 a month? Yeah, nobody. Nobody in this room. However, we're not talking about retiring on this one house. We're talking about retiring on the 250th house or the 10th house once it's paid for, or whatever your theory might be. But that $114 a month times 12, $1,368 a year, the ROI on my $50,000 is deplorable. It is pretty sad at 2.7%. So that's actually what you would call the cash-on-cash return, COCR in the book. But so $1,368, how you get to the ROI on cash-on-cash return is your cash, $1,368, and I do it this way, times 100 to move the decimal, divided by the $50,000 I put into it, and you get 2.7%. So your cash-on-cash return is pretty sad. And the way you make money in real estate is only in cash, right? That's the only way that rentals make you money, right? No, no, not even a little bit. That's actually the least amount of money that you'll make on this hypothetical rental that I told you it's not actually hypothetical, right? So I make this cash flow, let's say, and then I have principal reduction. What is the principal reduction in year one? Well, it's about $1,320 because I'm going to make every mortgage payment, right? Aren't you going to make every mortgage payment? You're going to pay your principal and interest payment every month, and the principal portion of that is about $1,320. And so I'm reducing my principal by that much. That's bye, Tyler. So that's raising my net worth and building my equity spread. That is money made, not money touched or even felt. That's not money made in that context, but it's still an increase to my net worth. It is a monetary value to me. And there are tax advantages to rental real estate. A lot of tax advantages. I don't know if I mentioned this. I'm not a CPA and I'm not a tax advisor. So I'm not giving you tax advice, but there are a number of tax advantages that I can anecdotally describe to you that I experience on houses like this. And some of them include the mortgage interest deduction. So if you're deducting from your income interest that you have paid, talk to your CPA about whether or not you can. But if you are, that mortgage interest deduction may be something like $8,700. The tax deduction, if you pay taxes, property taxes, does everybody in here pay property taxes? Yeah? If you can deduct that and you deduct from your income $1,518, same thing particularly or potentially with insurance. And then you got the depreciation deduction. Now there's a lot of talk and hoopla and law and legalese about cost segregation analyses and accelerated appreciation and Section 179 and all that stuff. That's not this class. That's the second million class, okay? Not this one. But when you start talking about the depreciation deduction, the value of the house divided by 27.5, and you scatter that out, that's how I got to 7272. If you did a cost seg, that number's way higher than that. That cost seg might make year one like 30% of the value of the house in year one. I'm not saying that you can, no tax advice here, but there's a calculable depreciation deduction. And so even just these, and there's more. For instance, any money that you put into it in repairs, I don't even put in here that I put 16 grand in the house, right? But if you put things into the house that you might be able to deduct, the dollars that I'm able to deduct, let's say, hypothetically, potentially, disclaimer here, $18,000. And if I'm writing off $18,000 of income, and I'm, let's say, in a 25% effective tax rate, I'm saving $4,500 in taxes. Does everybody get that? Can you see how that could work? It doesn't work like this every time. It's going to be better than this sometimes. It's going to be worse than this sometimes. Talk to your CPA and all the advisors and all that kind of garbage. But that's $4,500. Let's keep going because we ain't done. Appreciation. You can't bank on appreciation, am I right? But you can hope for it. And you sure hope it shows up. I don't invest for appreciation, but man, I'm investing for appreciation. Like I don't buy a house because I think that house is going to go up, but I buy houses because I think houses are going to go up. Do you see the difference there? Like if you sell me a house thinking, hey, this house, because it's near enough to the F&M Bank Arena or whatever, it's going to shoot up in value. I'm not going to do that. But I will buy houses hoping that things like that will cause an increase of value. That's a different strategy in my mind, a different perspective, and I have the latter. And so I'm banking on appreciation because that's how your net worth is going to go up over time. That's how I said earlier, is the stock market going to be higher or lower than it is now 10 years from now? Well, what about real estate? Is real estate going to be worth more later, more 10 years from now than it is now? I mean, I would expect so. And so you ask some of the more sophisticated real estate agents in the room who are all seemingly sitting at that bank table back there. You ask some of these folks, like, what is the average appreciation factor in this area? What are people going to say? 3, 4, 5%, somewhere in there? Now, yeah. If you look at the math on that, you look at Nashville and you're like, wow, the last 10 years it was, 8 or 10%. Well, like it was way better than Clarksville. Clarksville's still really good, And I'm not saying that you can count on 4% appreciation, but you can count on something, I would think. And so let's just say hypothetically, what I think is a modest appreciation factor of 4%, that ARV house of 240, if it appreciates like one would predict, you're going to make hypothetically $9,600 in appreciation. Now that is not realized gain unless you sold it, but it certainly goes on my personal financial statement. I'm going a year from now when I do my PFS again, it's going to be $9,600 higher or whatever I think it might want to actually be. All right, and then the equity play. Remember I said the $240,000 ARV house I bought for $150. Of course, I put some money into it or whatever. I got 50 grand into it. I financed 125, I think I said, right? So a $250,000 house that you put 125 in, you got $125,000 of equity. Now that's not money made, that's not money realized, that's not a realized gain, but on my personal financial statement, I took that $50,000 in cash and I turned it into $124,000 in equity. Do you see what I did there? Now, what looks better to a banker when I'm talking about the next deal? Hey, I got this $50,000 in cash, or I turn this $50,000 into $125,000. And you just kind of look at things like that, and you can strategize like that. But ways rentals make money, let's back up and look at this from a distance. They make money in cash flow. They make money in principal reduction. They make money in tax advantages. They are very tax advantageous, especially if you are a real estate professional. And I don't mean necessarily real estate agent, but if you talk to your CPA. You quit asking me tax questions, y'all. But if you're a real estate professional, that is an IRS code defined thing, then you have different tax advantages. We're recording this. I don't want to talk too much about that. All right. But anyway, so you got all these things. This is ways real estate can make money. Continued. No, just kidding. All right. So total year one. If you added up all of those things from that last slide, you add up all those numbers just in this, not the equity part, but as this hypothetical continues, it was about $16,800. So like I made, and I'm using quote fingers, then I quote made, let's say $16,800. Well, then you can take that same $50,000 that I dumped into it and do your ROI calculation. So you would take, for ROI, total monetary benefit, I do times 100 to move the decimal place divided by the investment. So it'd be 16,813 times 100 to move the decimal divided by 50,000, and you get a 33.6% IRR. What does IRR stand for? Internal rate of return. I think it's a weird way of saying that, internal rate of return, but it's like if you look into all of the things that you made money on, it's the whole return from all perspectives, right? So the internal rate of return is my net worth went up, I had tax advantages that are credited towards me because I reduced my tax liability. Instead of paying the government $4,500, I got to keep $4,500 and that kind of thing. So the total rate of return is 33.6%. So the 2.7% return on investment, which was the cash on cash return, like that sucked. That's pretty poor. But now does this look like a pretty good deal? At least to me it does. And it was about a 1% deal, or actually it was a 0.85% deal. And I had the money to put down on it, so it's fine. I could refinance it now if I wanted to and pull the cash out and that kind of thing. But just the math works on this one. Net worth grew from the $50,000 that I put into it to the $125,000. That's almost $75,000 in net worth growth. Now, if you are trying to become a net worth millionaire real estate investor, then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to put those in your portfolio over and over and over and over again. What if you do that 10 times? What does it look like? Louder for the people in the back. If I did that 10 times, what does that turn into? Yeah, I'd say 2 million. If you did it all in one day, it's 750,000. But what you're going to wind up doing is one today, 1, 2, or 3 months from now, 1, 6, or 8 months from now, another one a year from now, 2 or 3 more in the next month. And what's going to happen to that first one while you're doing this? It's going to keep appreciating. And so mathematically, you do that 10 times at $750,000, like Gloria said. But the reality is, if you do that over the next 5 years, that's $2-3 million in appreciation, in equity, right? Not appreciation. It's $2 or $3 million by the time they've continued to appreciate. And you can put it all in a spreadsheet. You can put whatever appreciation factor you want to, if it's 4% or 3.5% or 5% or whatever it is. You can put in your spreadsheet the diversified portfolio that you have. I'm doing this in real estate, but I've also got this IRA, or I've got this 401k, or I've got this in the mutual funds or brokerage accounts or whatever else it might be. And you can plug all that stuff in. And if your goal is to build to $1 million plus net worth in real estate, this is going to have to be a part of that, and a big part of that, in my opinion. And as you do this, you find that one deal. I made offers on, let's say, 25 houses, and then I get that one. Well, in that one, my net worth went up by $75,000. Again, in this hypothetical, they're not strict numbers to the T. But you know what's really cool? I bought that house in 2022. What's it worth now? You know what I mean? It's like now it's probably a 275 house. I could have done the same thing with one that I bought a year ago or 6 months ago or 7 years ago, and then the numbers just are what they are. So now I get in Rich Dad Poor Dad mode, and I'm like, get in the game, get off the bench. You need to do it because these rentals, they just make money that way, and you can build your net worth. You can grow your financial future that way. If you're taking a picture of it, wait till we get this one on there. Because here's the cool part. There's so much more that we could talk about. And I do wish we had a lot more time than we have. I'm getting a little dry mouth. I'm getting a little tired. Y'all got places to be. But there's so much more stuff that we could talk about. What if you went zero down on that house? If you went zero down on that house, you would negatively cash flow. And it is what it is. If you could tolerate the negative cash flow, that's fine. Let's say you negative cash flow $500 a month or whatever the math came out to, and you're just pumping money into it. You're putting $6,000 a year into that house because it negative cash flows, but your net worth is, or your return on investment is infinite because you didn't put any of your own money into it. You refinance it all out, you're zero down kind of thing. That lends more towards the BRRRR strategy if you pull all of your cash out. You can crunch numbers at 10%. You can crunch numbers at 20% or whatever other debt you might be able to have. A couple things. These are just notes, stream of consciousness kind of things. Aim at 1%. So like while you're trying to find and buy rentals to build your portfolio, aim for 1% or better. That's my opinion. If you can get close to that, great. If you've got a lot of money to put down and you can tolerate parking that money, so be it. But that's just kind of a baseline rule. Choose your target property based on your own criteria. Choose your criteria based on your own goals. Think about this. You could buy a $40,000 house in a rough area that rents for $800. That's a 2% rule deal. It would cash flow like crazy. But you know where it would fail? In some of those other areas that we were talking about. You wouldn't have very many tax advantages or principal reduction or appreciation or anything like that. So if your goals are, I want to build cash flow really, really fast, you might build in that realm. You might grow in that realm buying crappier houses in depressed areas that rent well. If your goals are, well, I need more tax advantages because I'm a real estate professional and I need to offset some of my active income by passive losses, you might overspend on high B class properties or A minus class properties to just park money that's going to negative in real estate it's going to negative cash flow, but it's going to have a really good tax advantages. There's all kinds of stuff like that. Again, if we do another class, it'd be like the second million class where we get deeper into that kind of stuff. You might find a good deal on an A class house, but it rents at 0.5% RTI. Negative cash flows, but it excels in other areas like that. All right, so let's talk about some important stuff. Just a few more things, and then we'll try to get out of here. Diversification. I talk about flipping, I talk about wholesale, I talk about renting, land development, new construction, all these different things. We've covered a whole lot today, and we've gone a little bit over time. Diversify. Do as much of those things as you can. Because you may find, like I did, that, you know what, when I was trying to buy rentals, I found something that made really good sense as a flip, so I decided, I guess I'll flip it. And then I sold it, made 50 grand, took 25 a piece, bought 2 rentals, kind of thing. Not really, I paid my taxes, but you know what I'm saying. You take that money, you roll it into the next thing. All right, tax implications, that's another big one. Cash is king, find the money. I really wanted to spend some time on this, because if you can find the deal, you can find the money. Matter of fact, if you found a deal good enough, you call me, we got the money, baby. We got it. We can take that joker down. If the deal is good enough, you can find the money. The hardest part is finding the deal. Do you agree with me on that? Hardest part in this whole game is finding the deal. The reason I started to say cash is king primarily is because when you're talking about making offers on properties, if you got all these contingencies and I got to get, Fannie Mae involved and all this kind of stuff, it's going to be harder than somebody who walks up and says, look, I got cash, I own a title company, I can close tomorrow, let's go. Cash is king. Find the money, find a partner, that kind of thing. Insurance is crucial. Don't get sued. I was going to talk some about that. Entity structure, again, that's the second million class if we do that. It sounds to me like we're going to do a second class. I'm going to write a second book and a third book and maybe a fourth. But anyway, my book series, first million, second, 10th, and 100th. We'll get there, just not there yet. But in the second million class, we might talk more about entity structure. We're talking about LLCs and trusts and things like that, and so much more. All right, so how can I help you? Here's where I want to leave you with, and then we will literally shut it down, maybe even turn the cameras off, and then I'll just answer questions until the last person leaves. How can I help you? I want to be able to help you by teaching you, if that's what you want me to do. I didn't come into this saying, hey, we're going to upsell and we're going to do more classes, but I might. If I do and you want to come, great. I don't need your money. I don't care. But if I can teach you in a second million class, if I get enough people that say, please do it, I'll do it. I have had an idea about doing a 10th million mastermind, which would be a very specially targeted, selected group of interviewed and recruited individuals, let's say, where people are already past that first and second million who want to join me in the 10 plus kind of ranks, so to speak. I don't want people higher than that because they're actually going to teach in this seminar series. I want people who are trying to get to that mark but are on that way. And I thought, what would be really cool is a 3-day mastermind at one of my lake houses where I bring in all the catering and I bring in guest speakers who are experts in their fields and that kind of thing. I might do that. It's probably going to be $5,000. I'm not telling you have to do that. But if I get enough interest in that, I'm probably going to do that. In the past, also, I have done some teaching and coaching. I'm not selling any courses. I'm not selling my consulting, but I do bill $300 an hour. It's my lawyer rate. So if you want me to spend some time with you, I'm happy to do that. And I'd love to dig deeper into, here's how to do a PFS. You let me review it. I'll show you mine. You show me yours. I don't care. And let's talk about how to grow from there depending on your very specific goals. We can talk about that if you want to. Again, I'm not selling it to you. I don't care. Like if you want it, great, let's do it. Where I do want to put some emphasis on is I can partner with you on deals. As you're going through this, I want to be a resource for you. I will help you analyze a deal, and if you close it somewhere else and list it with another agent and I get no dollar from that, that's fine. I want to help you. I would really like it, though, if I do get to close it, if I do get to partner, or I do get to whatever. Like if I get some benefit from it, that's great because I'm also trying to provide a livelihood for my family as well. And so in that, if you have a deal that you want some help analyzing, I'll help you analyze it. If I get a cut of it, or if I get to partner, or if you close at Apex or whatever, don't care. That's fine if I do, if I don't, whatever. But I do want you to know that I'm available to partner on deals. I've got capital, I've got the infrastructure, and I'll give you a quick example or two. So I've made that pitch to a handful of people. Sometimes they bring me a house and they're like, I found this deal, and the deal has margins, but I don't know how to do it. I don't know what to do next. I don't have the money. I don't whatever. And I've done this a couple of different ways. I've said, you give me the deal, I'll let you know when it's done and give you half the money. And I have blown people's minds with that, because they don't know what's going on behind the closed doors or whatever. And I'm like, okay, here's $36,000. And that number's not made up. I literally stroked a check to somebody for $36,000, which was their half of the $72,000 that I made when I flipped it. And all they did was find the deal, and it was awesome. Now, that guy learned a whole lot along the way, and now he doesn't need me. And it's really sad because he doesn't bring me deals anymore. But then another couple that brought me a deal, they found on Facebook Marketplace. And they were like, hey, we found this deal. She's an agent, by the way, but he, local law enforcement, they wanted to get into real estate. And it's like, well, let me flip it with you. Y'all be project managers. I'll fund it. And we kind of separated duties like that. So they flipped it with my money. And then, we listed it, we sold it, we made money, and we split it. It was $26,000 a piece at the end of the day. And for that young couple who had not yet had their first baby, but now they do, and she's adorable. For that young couple, like a $26,000 check blew their minds. blew their minds. And I loved it. I loved every second of it because I love writing checks and I love blowing people's minds. It was so cool. So anyway, I'll partner on deals with people. I jump in with partnerships on rentals and commercial and land development, stuff like that. I've got the capital. I've got the infrastructure. I've got the subs. I've got the contractors. Everybody on that list where it said build your team, I genuinely do have everybody on the team. Real estate agent, even if we didn't partner on it, I'd love to list your flips. If you need help with your flips, I know the game, obviously, and I can help you from start to finish. As an attorney, if you need help, I can do LLCs, contracts, evictions, etc. I've been an attorney for 18 years. I've got friends who are attorneys in the room here, and so we can get in and we can help you with any number of things. Entity structure, that's the second million class kind of thing, but you need to learn that. And then Apex Title. Who has benefited from being in this class today? Thank you. Thank you, thank you. And if you want to thank me, please bring a closing to Apex Title. Just reward me for my time and diligence, and Heidi and Melanie in the back by bringing your next closing to Apex. And thank you, to God be the glory. Thank you. Now I'm going to take a minute to shut some stuff down, and then I'll be available for any questions that you have.